Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon. Die Hard is absolutely a Christmas movie, Martin.
And I'm Patrick. Absolutely no, it isn't, Gara. Isn't that
So,
really,
Patrick,
Damon, who you and I are? Like we are from the very jump of this. You were the Nightmare on Elm Street guy. I was the Jason guy. Like we've always been on the opposite sides of the aisle with regards to horror movies. You love Quentin Tarantino. I don't. But here we are 5 years later, Damon, and still doing it. And I'm so excited because it is the year end episode.
yes, it is. 2025 was an interesting year because 2024 was a banner year for horror. We had a really, really
So good.
strong year last year. And 2025 has had more than a few ups and downs. Now, I'll tell you ahead of time, spoiler alert, and by the way, like, I'm not saying like we're ruining movies here, but spoiler alert, The Conjuring Last Rites is not on my top 10 list. Shocker of all shockers
What?
there. But like, we did the review of The Conjuring Last Rites. We didn't love it. It wasn't terrible, but it was just kind of like, all right, now we can see why now you're moving on to something else because you've run out of ideas for this franchise. But it made a boatload of money at the box office. And then you get a movie like Megan. The first one was a total surprise. No one saw it coming, ends up earning a boatload of money at the box office. Sequel comes out, so much hype, so much money behind the promotion, and it absolutely bombs. So horror, like every other genre in film in 2025, was totally unpredictable.
Peaks and valleys, Damon. That's just how it goes. And I feel like I always try to like listen to the last year's best of to get a gauge of like where what the whole year felt like, and it really does seem like an every other year thing, which makes sense. Like I feel like some years in development things just get knocked out of the park and there's a groove going, and all the right filmmakers were making something, and then the off year where they're not making something, where they're actually putting something together, you have like a low year. It's kind of weird how it works, but it's cyclical like anything else. I think 2025 overall, honestly, overall has been kind of a hit or miss year. And the truth is, my top like three movies in horror are for me untouchable. They've been fantastic all year long. Everything below it is either okay or interchangeable. And I feel that way about all my overall movies as well. My top three movies, it's like, nope, these are the top three. Nothing beats them this year. Anything under them sort of felt like, well, I could replace this with that. And honestly, it wouldn't make much of a difference. That's usually how it should go. But 2024 specifically, why I say I always look back. When I look back on 2024, you and I were scrambling to make sense of how a movie was at 10 and not number three, how a movie was at nine and not at number two. Like it was such a badass fucking year for horror that this year felt genuinely underwhelming. And I was putting my list together as we do, and it's sort of a fun little process that I like to get into, and I'm texting back and forth with you and we're figuring everything out. And at one point I go, Damon, I don't even have enough to make 10 films. I don't know what to do. Then I realized I had mislogged a few movies. They weren't actually logged under horror. A couple weren't even logged at all. Like Frankenstein wasn't even logged. I was like, oh shit, I have to log Frankenstein. So when I actually figured it out, I found 10 that I was like, I feel good about these 10. But I'll be real with you, it's not like 10 through 7 is like, damn, you gotta like this is horror. This is what I'm fucking. It's not like last year. It doesn't have that same bite to it like last year did. I feel like my top five are strong. I think they're good showings. I think they're great representatives of 2025. But yeah, Damon, overall for movies, this was not my favorite year.
It feels like the discourse around horror, and I'm talking about like the biggest, like most talked about horror films of the year, have been very divisive. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't always happen. There's always going to be a contrarian. Like, you could say, oh man, The Godfather is an all time classic. And one person will say, The Godfather sucks. It's boring, blah, blah, blah. I understand there's always going to be those contrarian opinions, but this year it felt even stronger. Like, I would argue that Sinners was clearly one of the biggest films of the year. It's an Oscar favorite. It's an award-winning film, and generally speaking, it was overwhelmingly positive received. But I did see a pretty decent smattering of people saying it was overrated. It's not even really a horror film. Blah blah blah. 28 years later, another film you and I gave a glowing review to. A lot of people hated that movie. Like
A lot of people.
a lot of our close like review, like Horror Friends, or like it was really disappointing. They called it the most disappointing film of the year. It was a very divisive film. I know at some point we're probably going to talk about Weapons, another one, much like Barbarian, a film that did incredibly well at the box office, and the fans seemed to love it. But in the horror community, it was, I would say, more positive than negative, but still there was those contrarian opinion, like a lot more contrarian opinions saying, I didn't really like it. It wasn't really that good for me. And it kind of went that way down the line. Like, I don't feel, and I understand, like, when we did a couple years ago, you and I had Talk to Me, the Philippou Brothers debut film, is our number one film of the year. I think it was 2023.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, there were mostly positive response. There were a few, like, there were definitely a few people saying, oh,
Yeah.
it wasn't scary. It was but I would say, like, it was at least 80-20 positive to negative reviews. I feel like this year, even the best films, and I would say Sinners is probably the most well received horror film of the year, not even getting into our list or anything, just talking about like the general sense of the audience. That one might be 80-20, but like I think like everything else, like I saw Frankenstein was like basically 50-50. A lot of people are like, oh, I loved it. I saw a lot of people saying it was boring, didn't do anything for me. And I feel like that's kind of like how we closed out last year with Nosferatu. Like that was a film that had so much hype around it. It came out. I would say it's like 60-40, like positive to negative. Like there were far more negative reviews than I thought there were going to be. I thought I was going to love Nosferatu and I didn't. So this year, to me, has been much more divisive. Like even the biggest films, like we mentioned The Conjuring Last Rites, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to kick the movie because clearly they made a shit ton of money. They don't care about my
Yeah.
opinion. But like that one, it felt like the vast majority of like reviewers, critics, TikTok reviewers, whatever, it was like 70-30 negative. Like 70% were like, this is boring. You're fighting a mirror. Like, what are we doing here? But then it makes a ton of money at the box office. It kills it.
Baby.
And I'm not even going to mention Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Well, I guess I am because I mentioned it, but like another one where you're just like, this movie is not good. And the vast majority of the reviews have not been good. But it made a boatload of money at the box office. So this, to me, I think that's what's going to define 2025 for me, Patrick, is it's one of the most divisive years in horror. There's not, to me, a truly universally beloved film. I'd say Sinners comes the closest, but even that felt like there was definitely a bigger smattering of fans saying, it wasn't really horror, it wasn't scary, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I think that's how I'll remember this year as like one of the most divisive years in terms of opinions on horror.
You couldn't be more astute about that. Great Damon Martin constantly with his finger on the pulse of what's going on out there in moviedom. I'm looking at my top five right now. Every single one of them, barring possibly one, but I would say, I could confidently say my top five is all of it is divisive. All of it was like, this movie rocks, or I hate this movie, it sucks. Like quite literally, I look at everything on there. It's interesting that my 10 through 6 were genuinely, I think most people were like, I really loved all these movies. I'm looking at my 10 through 6 and we're going to get to that in just a second. Don't you worry. Don't you worry, folks. We heard you loud and clear. We're going to get to it. But my 10 through 6, almost everybody was like, I love this movie, except maybe 10. And we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah, it was an interesting year, and here's the thing: like the movies that I loved, I really loved. Like I really
Yes.
genuinely loved those movies. But like I said, there were still very divisive opinions. Like there's not a universally beloved film, and I know there's never going to be a universally beloved film. But yeah, it was an interesting year in terms of like of opinions. And I've watched a lot of people's top 10 lists, and I've agreed with like 30% of the lists I've seen. And it's not because like I'm trying to be the contrarian. I'm not. But it's weird, like how mixed opinions are this year. Like, there's a couple best of lists I saw from critics that I absolutely respect, and I'm just like, why is that like number 3 on your list? Like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? That feels like the definition of 2025 horror to me. So, Patrick,
Yeah.
let's get into it. We're not going to waste any more time. We are going to start out with our top 10 through 6 films of 2025, kind of getting into like the lower half of the list. Do you want to just go? I know we typically go back and forth, but do you want to just give your 10 through 6? I'll give my 10 through 6, and then we can discuss. Or how do you want to do it?
I'd like to propose something. One of us can go first, 10 through 6. The other can react to that. We can have that discussion, and then the other person can give their 10 to 6, and then the other person can react. Because I have a feeling, I have no idea. Damon and I did not show each other our lists. This is all surprise. You're learning at the same time that we are. What do you think about that, Damon? Just because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of reaction this year.
I'm all for it. So I will defer to the great Patrick Garrett to give your 10 through 6 to kick us off here on our Best of 2025 show. So Patrick, what is your 10 through 6 best horror movies of 2025?
Coming in at number 10, The Rule of Jenny Penn. Number 9, The Ugly Stepsister. Number 8, Silent Night, Deadly Night. Number 7, Bugonia. Number 6, Companion. Damon, your thoughts?
Interesting. I didn't see a couple of those in there. I'll be honest. Not that they. By the way, so the Ugly Stepsister is the one that I feel like that's another one that's been very, very divisive this year. I saw it.
Oh, really? I saw mostly positive stuff.
Oh, I definitely saw some negative ones. I thought it was pretty good. It was a surprising. We've had some ups and downs with Shudder Originals, but that one was pretty solid. Companion, I loved, and it's a movie that stuck around from January to now,
Yes.
which says a lot. The movie
That's why it's at 6.
Yeah, so it's very strong. I got to be honest, I am so impressed you put Silent Night, Deadly Night in there because we loved that film. We were totally surprised by that film, and I'll be honest. Spoiler alert! It didn't make my top 10, but it was so close. I had to fight myself to figure out what I was going to put in that top 10. Because as you mentioned, and I agree, my top 5 I'm pretty comfortable with. 6 through 10 was kind of well, this could go in, that could go in. And yeah. I'm not saying I didn't make compromises, but there were 3 films that I kind of felt bad leaving out, and I would say Silent Night, Deadly Night was one of them. So yeah, solid. And Begonia, I loved Begonia, and I'll be honest, that movie was it was the perfect definition of weird but awesome movie that I love.
Yeah.
My opinion on weird movies that don't make a whole lot of sense. And even though I am a David Lynch fan, which is totally contrarian to what that actually means, because David Lynch made nothing but weird movies. But Begonia and to a larger extent, Yorgos Lanthimos has become a weird sweet spot in my weird. And by the way, Begonia is not a hard story to follow. It's actually a pretty it's pretty straightforward story. But it definitely is weird.
Especially the end. Oh, it gets weird at the end.
But I love it, and it's weird because when was a Poor Things, make sure I get the title right. When Poor Things came out, I liked that movie. I thought it was a really good movie, but I didn't love it quite as much as everyone else did. I was it's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. Then Kinds of Kindness came out, and I loved it. And I think I was the only person who just absolutely loved that movie. Most people are it was all right. I loved it. But Begonia was kind of the good sweet spot where it's I really enjoyed that movie. It was well done. Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone killed it in that movie. So yeah, great one right there. What am I missing?
Companion at 6, Silent Night, Deadly Night. I'll just tell you, I was so impressed by it. And the reason because it was one of those ones where I was this might go off the list. But I think when you look at my honorable mentions, you'll realize that Silent Night, Deadly Night is a true horror movie. It's a proper slasher. We're always up for a good slasher, and it's a great slasher. And it's just so much fun. And so I was I'm ranking it this high. I can't rank it above Begonia because Begonia is an excellent film. Honestly, it would actually probably sit higher than most of these on my overall list, truth be told. But it's not as horror as the other things. It's really more like a funny games type horror movie. So Silent Night, Deadly Night couldn't go above it, but I was just Silent Night, Deadly Night is a great slasher that pays off, that delivers, and comes from an angle that I have not seen. Originality counts big for me.
Yeah, and we just reviewed it last week, so I'm not going to harp on what we talked about in the podcast, but that was just a totally surprising movie for me. And I know when you go into a movie with no expectations and come out really liking it, it can color your opinion a little higher because because the exact opposite happens sometimes when you go into a movie thinking, man, I can't wait to see this, it's going to be awesome, and then it sucks and you're like, man, I hate this movie. So we've always talked about be careful with your expectations. I went into Silent Night, Deadly Night with no expectations and came out being wow, what an original, fun take on this premise. So yeah, I'm super impressed I made your top 10 list because we've had a big discussion this year about how slashers have not been great. And I have a slasher in my, and I actually kind of have, I guess technically I have two in my bottom five, but one for particular that I know was very buzzy this year that didn't get a ton of press, but I actually have a slasher of my own in the 10 through 6 category. So,
And is Rule of Jenny Penn anywhere on your lists?
so it, in all honesty, it should be on my honorable mentions.
Okay.
I didn't because I had to whittle it down a little bit. But I
Sure.
did really enjoy that movie. I thought it was a pretty solid movie. We gave it a pretty overwhelmingly positive review when we reviewed it early this year. So I liked Rule of Jenny Penn. I thought it was a good movie. And like I had to whittle down what all I was putting in my honorable mentions because while I do believe this wasn't the strongest year for horror, there were still some pretty good films. And I know that sounds like a really backhanded compliment, but like pretty good films. And to me, that's where Rule of Jenny Penn falls in. It's a pretty good film. It's not great, pretty good film.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's why it's at my 10. But to me, it was super dreadful. Great, just great dread horror. And I thought incredibly well written, incredibly well acted. It just kind of had everything. And again, I think once we get to the honorable mentions, you'd be like, yeah, some of those movies are made better, but that's probably more of a horror. And this is a horror list. I think at the end of the day, I want people to remember that is that I'm doing my best to judge these as enjoyable horror films. And I think
Yeah.
everything on my list qualifies.
I would agree. I would agree. All right, you want me to get my top 10 or top
I
10
can't.
through 6, I should say.
You're 10 through 6. I can't wait. I'm going to write them down so I can react to them if I know them.
All right. So at number 10, I went with a little sort of summer camp slasher, but sort of not a summer camp slasher, Marshmallow. At number
Okay.
9, I went with Dave Franco and Allison Brie together. I really enjoyed that film. At number 8, here's my slasher that I don't even know if you saw, but a movie called Night of the Reaper, which is on Shudder. I really enjoyed that film. Probably one of my favorite slashers of the year. Number 7, Predator Badlands, one of the ultimate action sci-fi horror films of the year. And at number 6, almost took top 5, one of my all-time favorite books, now one of my favorite movies of the year, Clown in a Cornfield.
I'm only surprised by one thing. Clown in a Cornfield. Not because it's 10 through 6, because it's not top 5. If you listen to our Clown in the Cornfield episode, Damon was through the roof and loved that movie. I did not like it. And so it turned into an episode where we argued, but those are the best kind. Those are our favorite kind. I'm most surprised that Clown in the Cornfield didn't make your top 10. I mean, excuse me, your top 5, because I knew how much you loved that book and how much you felt that the movie did it justice. So that's interesting to me. I liked Marshmallow. I think it floated all over my list. I was like, where does this belong? Where does it belong? Ultimately, it didn't make anything. And not because I thought it was bad, but because I just thought like where things were sitting, there was other things I really wanted to highlight. Together is another one. That's on my honorable mentions list. We'll get to that later. Night of the Reaper, I did see, and I'm telling you, everyone loved it except me. It's so typical. Everyone was like, I eventually caved in and watched it because I was like, man, so many people are talking about Night of the Reaper, and it didn't land for me. I don't know why. I didn't even do a bother. I didn't do a deep evaluation on it. It just didn't stick for me. And Predator Badlands will probably come up later as well.
And the thing with Night of the Reaper, and this kind of goes to the heart of what we talked about with Silent Night, Deadly Night, it was a slasher, in my opinion, with a little bit of an original twist in there, which to me is what the slasher genre has been missing over the last few years when you get these kind of generic, we've seen this a million times done before slashers, and we talked a lot this year about, is the slasher dead? Do audiences even care about the slasher anymore? Because you just don't see slasher films outside of like when Scream comes out, and Scream 7 is going to come out next year. I'm sure it's going to make a boatload of money. But generally speaking, like slashers have not been slaying it at the box office and have not been slaying it critically. And by the way, like there's a lot of these like critics versus audience reviews where like the critics love it and the audience hates it, or the critics hate it and the audience loves it. It feels like slasher films like we did the I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot this year. And it wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. It was there.
It was there.
It felt very formulaic, and I was like, this is the problem. We're just we're going through the motions. There's nothing original about this. To Silent Night, Deadly Night, and to my point, to what I had in my list for Night of the Reaper, that felt like original slashers, like something that I hadn't really seen before, a little different twist on the genre. And I put Marshmallow in there also because it's kind of a slasher. It's kind of not a slasher, but I saw it twice. I saw it once earlier in the year, and I did a written review for it, and I saw it later in the year when we did an actual podcast episode for it. And there was space. Like a lot of times when I watch movies before we review them, I watch them back to back. Like I watched Nosferatu twice. I watched Frankenstein a couple times before we did the review for that. But it's all usually encased within like a week or two span. I saw Marshmallow like May, and then I saw it again in like whatever it was, like September, October, whenever we actually reviewed it. I had enough distance to be like, oh, was I just like enamored with the fun of this movie the first time I saw it and it doesn't hold up? No. It still blew me away. It was still such an original, fun concept. So I had to put that. That was the one where I was like, I could put Begonia here. I could put a couple other things here. But I was like, I think I want to give some flowers to Marshmallow for like a fun original film this year.
Marshmallow, very original. I really enjoyed it. I think that team did a great job. And it's funny, like without even thinking about it, what I think it does so great is that it creates a familiar setting with an unfamiliar premise. And I'm working on a script currently that's the same kind of vibe. Nothing at all like Marshmallow, but the idea of like, oh, I know what movie I'm getting into, and then the movie is really nothing like you thought you were getting into. So I give it its flowers for that, because you're like, oh, it's a camp slasher, and you're like, wow, it's nothing like that, and it's entertaining and interesting, and it comes from a whole different left field. Even though it made none of my lists, I still think it's a good movie.
And to your point about Clown in the Cornfield, I love it, but I also, the reason, and I'm not saying this doesn't mean I didn't love it. I absolutely loved that movie, and clearly, if you listen to this podcast, you know I just slather all over the book series actually. It was a battle between 5 and 6. When you hear my number 5, I know you'll agree with my number 5 versus my number 6, which was Clown in the Cornfield. But I also had to kind of temper my own expectations here because I did love the book so much, and I do love the book so much, and the adaptation was awesome. Like there were tweaks and changes, and I said even on the podcast, I kind of wish they'd done this. I kind of wish they'd shown this, little things here and there. But that's just because I'm a passionate book reader of that series, and I love those series. Adam Caesar's an incredible author. But I put it at number 6 in large because like I know that I love it beyond just because it's a film, if that makes sense. Like I'm not judging it pure. I know I'm not judging it purely as just a film. I'm judging it because I also love the book that it came from. And I'm sure that is universal for a lot of people. When a great, like when a great Stephen King, book turns into a great movie, it's easier to love it because you know the material so well, and you kind of become passionate about it. I think even like a TV show that you and I both absolutely adored this year, It Welcome to Derry, while it wasn't based around a book, and yes, I mean based originally on a book, but like even you who had never read the It book, you saw It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2, you had familiarity, you kind of already liked it. I know you really like It Chapter 1, so you already kind of went in with like a little bit of a more positive opinion going in. You weren't going in just totally as a blank slate when you saw that TV show. And that was me with Clown in the Cornfield. I adore that book. But I also know because I adored that book, that probably did color my opinion a little bit because and they didn't, I know this sounds like such a backhanded comment, they didn't mess it up. They did a good job with it. And so I was like, great, give me more of that. So yeah, number 6 for me was Clown in the Cornfield.
Fair enough, Damon.
So Patrick, let's move on to our next category, and we're going to talk about our best performance of the year. Now, movies don't always have to be strong. The divisive opinions are out there, what they are. Not everyone's going to agree with our picks, and not everyone's going to agree with our top 10. But I think it's hard to argue when you talk about best performances because you can just look at acting and say that was a really, really good job. So, Patrick, would you like to read off our nominees for best performance in horror in 2025?
Damon, yes, of course. And interestingly enough, there are movies on here that you don't like, and there's a movie on here that I don't like. The point is you can't deny a good performance when you see one. So here we go. The nominees for best performance of 2025 in a horror film are Michael B. Jordan, Sinners; Sarah Wong, Bring Her Back; Sally Hawkins, Bring Her Back; Ralph Fiennes, 28 Years Later; Jacob Elordi, Frankenstein; Oscar Isaac, Frankenstein; Sophie Thatcher, Companion; and Amy Madigan for Weapons.
So, Patrick, I'll turn it over to you. I'll defer to your greatness out of the gate. Who did you give your best performance in horror to for 2025?
Damon, I made sure to comb over every one of these movies more than once. I want to be clear to the audience with that. I did not go into this with any flavor of the month, feelings. I reevaluated every single one of these movies. Most of these movies I watched at least 3 times. My best performance for 2025 in a horror film goes to Sora Wong for Bring Her Back. Damon, we have been very difficult to child actors on this show. And we're never like shitty. We're just like, okay, that's not really what I'm looking for. Sora Wong, whether you like or hate the film, first rang very authentic, and I realized on the subsequent viewings that the Philippou brothers are actually really good with young actors. They really know what to do with young actors. They're doing it really well. Sora's not necessarily a known actor. I don't know that she's done much outside of Bring Her Back at all. She is the linchpin of the movie. She's the orbit. She is the planet in which everything around the movie orbits. If you mess that up, the movie does not work. You need to care for this child. You need to care that this child survives. And when I say like on the last viewing, I was like, oh my gosh, she's not even acting. She's just a kid, and it's really working. Now we've had that before, where I think Boy Behind the Door we were very impressed. Our buddies Justin Powell and David Charbonnier directed these kids. They just felt like kids. They didn't feel like they were doing anything other than being children. Sora Wong did that for me. And I think all these performances on this list are incredible. I was just like, man, the fact that she could do that and carry that movie, I couldn't deny it, Damon. At the end of the day, that it was Sora's year.
For you. I didn't like Bring Her Back. It was not one of my favorite films of this year. I was actually pretty bummed about that movie because I adored Talk to Me, and just Bring Her Back just didn't land. I rewatched it recently, just trying to give it a second chance because it's kind of like I talked about with Marshmallow, where I put some distance between me and the movie.
Yeah,
I wanted to watch it back again. I watched it back, and I'm not gonna say I hated it by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't hate the movie. I'm not sitting there saying, man, what a terrible film and it's poorly made or any of that kind of stuff. It just didn't land for me, and I think. Yeah. Part of the reason for that has come down to my growing disdain for trauma candy as like the biggest fodder for horror lately. Like I feel like we are getting away from that a little bit. Like I think we've had films that didn't just focus so much on trauma and loss in movies because we kind of talked about that, like, oh man, another dead mom, another dead dad, that's another catalyst for a movie. And it kind of felt like it was trauma. I call it trauma candy. Like we're just like, all right, come on, like let's get some more original ideas in here. And I feel like for me, Bring Her Back was almost like the breaking point where I was like, all right, another one of
you're exhausted.
I was done. I was just like, I can't. Now, to your point about Sora Wong, you're absolutely right. She did a good job. Certainly not her performance. Like I said, when I went almost, I would say 90 to 95% of criticism when we talk about movies isn't, yes, performances can color how you view a movie, but mostly it comes down to like the direction and the writing, the script. You know what I mean? You could put the best actor in the world you can put, the best actor in the world in a shitty movie, it's still a shitty movie. Like you don't just save it because there's a good performance or a good actor in there. So yeah, and child actors do, they are kind of hit and miss, and we absolutely do not go out of our way ever to be cruel to a child on this show, especially knowing like you're a young actor. You're not really supposed to be at your peak of your game when you're in a movie at 10, 11, 12 years old. So yeah, I mean, I didn't like Bring Her Back, but I can see where she would be in that list for best performance. So for me, Patrick, there's 2 actors on this list who I feel like are going to be up for Oscars this year. Mm-hmm. So I didn't pick them. I didn't pick them. Not because they weren't good, just because I know they're going to get their flowers left and right. And that's Michael B. Jordan and Amy Madigan from Weapons. I feel like Amy Madigan is a very strong contender to get a Best Supporting Actress nomination. I think Michael B. Jordan is almost a shoo-in for Best Actor. At least nomination. I think my boy Leonardo DiCaprio is probably going to win it, but I would certainly be happy for Michael B. Jordan if he won it. But I think everyone's like, much like, even if you didn't like Sinners, you can universally say Michael B. Jordan was really good in that dual role. Stack and Smoke in that movie. So for me, Patrick, my best performance of 2025 goes to Sophie Thatcher from Companion. Now, I liked Companion, and you will hear Companion come out of my mouth again in this podcast, teaser for what's coming soon. I rewatched Companion a couple of times. Now, I will say when we reviewed that movie back in January, we were both kind of pissed off about the trailers for that movie because it gave away a big twist. We're like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
But the good news was, unlike a movie like Abigail, which ruined the surprise and it ruined the movie. I mean, it really
The
did.
whole
Like,
movie.
as Companion didn't. Even though they gave away the twist in some of the trailers, which you and I were like, this is so dumb, why would you do that? They still managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat with enough surprises and twists and turns from that moment on, from the big twist. And I'm not going to ruin it for people. But from the biggest twist in that movie, they still interlaced enough other surprises and, oh, I didn't see that coming, and oh man, what they did with that character, that the movie still worked. And Sophie Thatcher, who it's been well documented in the show, I'm a fan of Yellow Jackets. I had Heretic in my top 5 last year. I adore Sophie Thatcher. I think she's one of the best young actors out there. And the way she carried this movie on her back, and by the way, that's not saying other people weren't great. I think it's well documented. I love Jack Quaid. I think he's a great actor. I'm a big fan of The Boys. Yeah. And he was really good in that movie. He plays an asshole in that movie, and he's really good as an asshole. And I'm like, wow, this guy's always kind of like the nice guy you like. You don't root for him in that movie. He's a dick. But Sophie Thatcher played that character in Companion so strong, and she has to hit the full range of everything in that movie, from happiness to sadness to tragedy to loss to anger and rage, and she hits the full spectrum. And I don't think, in my opinion, Patrick, she's getting enough credit for how good she is. Like, I think that movie is pretty universally, that definitely is one of the stronger films of the year where most people liked it. But most people are, oh, I love Companion. They're not generally just praising Sophie Thatcher's performance. They're praising the movie as a whole, which, by the way, again, the movie's great. But I just thought her performance was so strong, and I wanted to give her flowers because movies, when they come out in January, by the end of the year, people kind of forget about them. You know what I mean? And I've watched Companion like 3 times, and I love it. I think it's just a really, really fun movie and such a creative movie. And her performance, she slays it. She does a great job.
Your head was where my head was, because that's kind of how I felt about Sora Wong. I was like, I don't think she's going to get any recognition anywhere, and I think she did a tremendous job. And Sophie Thatcher and her were on the same exact bubble for me, with Sally Hawkins too, because I was like, Sally Hawkins killed it, but she's probably not getting a nomination either. So Sophie Thatcher was on that bubble with them, and those two did phenomenal. She did phenomenal. She holds that whole movie together. But also Companion's just a kick-ass movie. There's a lot to like about that movie. I think Sophie Thatcher has a very long and illustrious career ahead of her. Part of me, this sounds sacrilege, part of me wants her to get out of horror, because I think she's so good. I don't want her to get stuck doing horror movies, and I don't think she will. But I feel like she's kind of in a space right now where she's like, I'm getting all the horror movies I can take right now. Like, let's fill up on them. And I get it. Go get your bag. I don't have a problem with that. But she's so talented. I like, for instance, Sally Hawkins, a great example. Sally Hawkins decided to do a horror movie. She can do whatever the hell she wants. She's Sally Hawkins. She's an Oscar winner. She can do whatever she wants. Sophie Thatcher could be an Oscar winner. She's that good. She's an incredibly talented actor, and Companion shows it.
And Sophie Thatcher, to me, she's an artist, and she reminds me of a lot in terms of like her career trajectory. In terms of like I know she's a musician. On top of that, she's done TV, of course, with Yellow Jackets, and now she's transitioned into doing a lot of films. She reminds me a lot of Jessie Buckley, who I adore. I think Jessie Buckley's awesome. And Jessie Buckley, like, she did Men, which is a movie I don't like, but I loved her in that movie. I love Jessie Buckley. I think she's phenomenal.
Did you see Hamnet yet?
I just did, actually. I just watched it.
Holy fuck, Jessie Buckley killing it. Oh my God, she'll crush you.
That movie is not to get off the subject. That movie is like that old TikTok thing is like emotional damage. that movie will mess you up. Yes, but I kind of compare Sophie Thatcher to her, to where it's like she hasn't done Marvel movies, she hasn't done a DC movie. She did appear in a Star Wars TV show very briefly in the Book of Boba Fett, but like that was, people kind of even forget she did that. But she's been very selective in like picking, and to me, she's picked the right roles. Like Heretic, I know didn't totally work for you, but I loved it. She's great in Yellow Jackets, and I think Companion's another example of that. I know you just talked about like doing other things. I think she's in a new like drama comedy that's coming out. I think they just filmed over in like Hong Kong or Thailand or something like that. She just finished filming, so she's going to branch out. She's going to do more. But I just thought she killed it this year, and I absolutely believe she was one of the best performances. But I also want to give her flowers because I know, she's not going to get an Academy Award nomination for this movie, and I'm not saying she should. I understand how the Academy Awards work, but I thought she did great. And to that point, Patrick, we are now going to move in to our top 5 films of the year. And this is where we're going to go back and forth because we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And to that point, my 5th best horror film of 2025 is Companion. And that kind of speaks to where I was having that debate myself. Do I want Clown in the Cornfield or do I want Companion? I put Companion for this reason. Incredibly original. And yes, the trailers pissed me off that they gave away one of the twists, but the movie is still so strong, and it's actually far more brutal than I ever imagined it would be. I thought I knew it was going to be. I knew it was going to be an interesting concept. Even if you just watch the trailer, like there's a moment where you see Sophie Thatcher holding her hand over a candle, and it sets her on fire, and she starts crying. You're like, oh my god, what's going on here? Very visceral trailer before they fucked it up and ruined it by telling you what's going on. But the movie plays out so smart, and like, it is a horror film, definitely a horror film, but way more gory, way more brutal than I thought it would be. But it's also wildly hilarious. Great writing. Just great writing, great directing, the whole thing all the way around. And in a movie of strong performances, Rupert Friend's great in that movie. Jack Quaid, as I mentioned, is great in that movie. Sophie Thatcher absolutely steals the show. So Companion is my number 5 horror film of the year.
Damon, I'm talking 11th hour. I didn't know if it was going to be number 5 or number 6. It's persisted all year long, as it does for everyone. I think I haven't heard anyone say anything bad about Companion. I think it's a universally beloved in the horror community. It really rings more like a black comedy than anything else. And by the way, no problem there. And I'm happy to welcome black comedies into the genre of horror. And it's plenty bloody and intense in the moments that it needs to. But it's just a funny and honestly a very fun movie, and very dark subject matter and all that stuff. But also just very light, like very fun, very engaging movie. One of the best movies of the year. That's why it's in my top 10, because I think Companion's fantastic.
It really. And by the way, credit to Companion, because when you come out in January, you can get lost in the mix. And that film never fell out of that, which to me, being in my top 5, your top 6, says a lot about how strong that movie is.
And Damon, my number 5, also came out way back in the day, to the point where I was like, did it even come out this year? But I was like, no, it did. And I loved it. My number 5 is Hard Eyes by Josh Rubin. Josh Rubin is one of the very rare and select directors that we have reviewed every film he's made. He did Scare Me, which we reviewed very, very early on in the podcast, I think first few months of the podcast. And then Werewolves Within, which we loved and instantly became one of my favorite werewolf movies of all time. I think that's a tremendous movie. And Hard Eyes. Hard Eyes was one of those movies this year that you either loved it or hated it. Like I couldn't understand the hate, but I guess the hate came from the fact that it was basically half a rom-com, which is that's a delicate dance. But if you know anything about Josh Rubin, if you follow him on social media, he's like a fun-loving, silly person. And so I could totally see him going like, what if we made a legit rom-com horror? That's exactly what he did. He rode the line right down the middle and gave us both movies. Half of this movie is 100% just a romantic comedy. The other half is a proper slasher. And it's not just a proper slasher, Damon. It's a funny ass slasher, which can also turn people off. Some people want their slashing serious. And I get that. I understand. Sometimes I want shit serious too. You know me. Wait till you read the script I sent you, Damon. It's not fun. Not at all. Believe me, I can oscillate between these worlds. But Hard Eyes really knew how to be fun and funny, and all the jokes landed, and it all like perfectly coalesced into this funny, romantic slasher. Great villain design. The Hard Eyes killer looks amazing. It's a very cool thing. Gory as hell, funny as hell, great jokes all around, at least in my opinion. I thought it was very funny. And so I was like, how do I not give this a top 5 slot? It did everything right.
I'm not going to ruin it by saying what happened, because we are a spoiler-free podcast episode this time, because a lot of these movies people may not have seen. The ending of Hard Eyes is almost what put that movie over the top for me. I love the killers, the motivation of the killer. It was so fun, and I'll be honest, it didn't make my top 10, but it was another one of those easily could. Like, it was on that fringe of like number 9, number 10, and like I said, I wanted to give some flowers to a movie like Marshmallow that just not a lot of people saw, because it was a very, very small indie horror film, and just you'd have to go on video on demand to watch it. But Hard Eyes absolutely could have been on the list. And it's kind of funny. We talked about how like the death of the slasher, yet you and I have a bunch of slashers. So maybe the slasher isn't dead. We just had to pick the right slashers.
Yeah. No, and I
So
think so. I think it was, and these were slashers that either came out of left field and didn't do the same old thing, or did not take themselves too seriously, and that's Hard Eyes, and that's Hard Eyes, that's Silent Night, Deadly Night. They don't take themselves too seriously, and they deliver on the slashers. Marshmallows delivers on originality. It's things you haven't seen before. If you're going to do a slasher, you need to reinvent it. You need to do something with it that isn't just the same old. It isn't just step and repeat. You got to do something interesting with it. And it's funny enough, like all these slashers ended up on our list, but they all tick those boxes.
yeah, it was. I really liked Hard Eyes. It was a really fun movie. It's one I've revisited. It's a very digestible movie. Like it does,
Yeah, easy watch.
it's not one of those ones where you need to sit down and have like an encyclopedia open trying to figure out what in the hell's going on. It's a really fun, and Mason Gooding and Olivia Holt had great chemistry. We always talk about
Wonderful.
chemistry on this show. Chemistry can make or break a film. Period. It can. If your actors don't have chemistry, it doesn't work. And
It becomes
Olivia
Keeper.
Holt, it, we'll get to Keeper eventually. But we Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding had great chemistry, and I would say to my number five, I think the like the weird not chemistry, and I mean that
Mhm.
like the chemistry, but like the weird chemistry that Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid had helped make that movie what it was. Chemistry can make or break your film, and I thought Mason Gooding and Olivia Holt absolutely slayed it. Listen, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I'm a huge Josh Rubin fan. I think he's an incredibly talented writer and director. I know the most divisive film was Scare Me. You didn't like that one. I loved it. It was one of my favorite films that year. But we knew right away this guy's got talent. He's going to make some really
Very.
cool shit. And he's continued to make really cool shit. Werewolves Within was amazing. And so was Hard Eyes. So, yeah, good pick. Didn't make my top 10, but easily could have. That's another one where it's like almost, when you said it's like, oh, man, I kind of wish I had put it number 10 or number 9, but
Yeah.
it's a great film. I absolutely adored it. Patrick, next category, our most disappointing film of the year. Now, let me differentiate this. A little bit later, we are going to do the worst horror movie of the year.
Totally
These are
different.
Two different categories. Worst movie of the year is a movie that like you just viscerally hated, you didn't want to see it again, and in my case, it would have stabbed my eyes out and watch it again. Disappointing is a movie where maybe you thought you were going to like it, or it just didn't work for you. Didn't hate it. Not a bad movie, not a poorly made movie. You understand maybe why other people like it, but it just didn't work for you. Do you want me to go first? Because you already know what mine is. And it's
I'm
pretty
sure I
easy to
know what
say.
yours is.
My most disappointing film of 2025 was Bring Her Back. And I know it's a movie that I would say, 60-40, 65-35 people.
I go
like.
75-25.
Yeah, it was pretty strong, but it just didn't work for me. And I think part of it did come down to the fact that I was so overwrought with the trauma candy movies. I was so over my mom's dead, my dad's dead, here's the aftermath, now I'm dealing with that, and just the badgering of trauma. I understand it's universal, and I understand why that subject matter takes such a center stage in great movies. I mean, you can point that to drama movies, great drama movies all over the place. But Bring Her Back just felt to me like the definition of and I mean this, I'm not trying to be cruel when I say this, the lowest hanging fruit. Like it just felt like, oh, another one. And by the way, not poorly made, not poorly acted, and I still adore the Philippou brothers. When they do their next movie, whatever it is, I will be the first person in line to watch it. This movie did not color, like weirdly, my worst movie of the year, which you can probably guess what it is, that movie absolutely colored. I'm genuinely not looking forward to the next movie that person makes. The Philippou brothers.
I'm very
have made
curious
two-
what that is because I don't know what you're going for.
You do know, trust me. The Philippou
Oh wait,
brothers
no,
have
I
made-
do know. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
The Philippou brothers have made two movies. Talk to Me was my favorite film of the year, and Bring Her Back ended up being my most disappointing. But here's the difference. The Philippou brothers, they're going to do Talk to Me, the sequel. I don't know when that's coming out, but they're going to do something else. And there's been rumors, things what they're doing. I don't care. I will be there. I'm not talking about like reviewing it for the podcast. I'm talking like they were going to do Street Fighter. They didn't end up doing Street Fighter, which I kind of wish they had based on.
Kind of wish
what
they
I've seen.
had after seeing the trailer. Jesus fuck.
Same thing with some inside knowledge we have about the original Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, good God, I wish they had made that movie. But Uh, Bring Her Back didn't work for me. But I'm not saying this like save my ass and saying it is my most disappointing film because I had high expectations for this one. I had high hopes. I don't care whether it's horror, action, comedy, freaking whatever, martial arts. I will be the first person in line for the next Philippou Brothers movie because I still think they're incredibly talented. Unfortunately, this one just didn't work for me. It just didn't work for me in the way that it worked for so many people. And I truly do think it comes down just the overwrought. I'm over the trauma candy movies. I'm over the my dad's dead, my mom's dead. Let's deal with the aftermath of that. It just feels like I've seen a million of those in the last few years. And I understand it's a common trope in horror. It's a common trope in every movie. But this one felt like the last straw. I was like, I can't take more of that. I can't take more of these trauma candy movies where it's just like bashing me over the head with sadness. Like, I understand horror movies are going to be sad, and Hamnet is a great example of a movie that's fucking tragically sad. but there's just something about those movies in horror where I reached my breaking point, and maybe that's part of what's coloring my decision. I'm just like, I can't take more of these, and that was kind of what Bring Her Back was to me.
That's fair enough. It hit you at the wrong time. You know what I mean? You're just like, that's it. I can't do this. It's interesting because I feel like my biggest disappointment is the same for a lot of the same reasons. And my biggest disappointment in 2025 is Weapons. And I know everyone's like, well, I'm sorry, what? The universally loved blockbuster hit Weapons that everyone loves? Damon's kind of in the same camp with Bring Her Back. It's like mostly everybody liked Bring Her Back. I think there was I was 70-30 on people who didn't like Weapons, and I'm in the 30% who didn't like Weapons. I rewatched it last night because I was like, I have to get this right because everybody fucking loves this movie. And I came in wanting to look, I hate Barbarian. This is well documented on this show. That didn't mean, and I'm just like you, that didn't mean I'm a hater. I showed up night one for Weapons. I said, whatever Zach Cregger's got next, I got to see what it is. I got to see what it's all about. I came in with an open mind. Start strong, and then boy, does the middle of this movie, and it happened last night again, the middle of this movie is a bloated corpse floating down the river. It's rough, and it's actually rougher than the first time I watched it. I was like, where's it going? I didn't know where it was going, so I was like, okay, where's it going? Interesting, kind of interesting. Rewatchability, this movie plummets for me. I mean, plummets when I realize that the middle of the movie is just wasting time to get to the end. In my opinion, the end is great. And the storyline of Alex, which we said this on the podcast, I won't rehash deeply here. The story of Alex, the child, phenomenal. And I thought to myself, boy, Zach Cregger had something with the teacher, the dad, the kid, and Aunt Gladys. He really had something there. Everything in the middle, it was just bloat. It really was. And it made it an exhaustive experience. It's still got a great ending. I still agree that I think the ending is a lot of fun to watch. I won't deny that. I think the movie is still dreadful. Like, I can see all the things that are positive about the movie, but as an overall experience, and especially last night, the rewatchability of this movie is almost nil for me. Like, I'm like, oh, I definitely don't need to watch this again. Like, it really, and I'm like you. He's got Resident Evil coming out. I can't wait to watch it, Damon. I can't wait to go see what that's all about. It's not painting I'm not a hater, because we're not haters. Rewind of the Living Dead are not haters, even though this year we've talked shit about a lot of movies. It's just, we evaluate movies is what we do, but we're not haters. We don't come into things ready to hate. And I came into this with an open mind, and I made sure to watch this last night before the podcast because I go, this is one of the most popular movies of the year. I got to see what's going on here. I just know that I can never sit down and rewatch this again. It's not that movie for me.
It's funny because your reasoning for not liking Weapons, I can look at objectively and say, I understand it.
Right.
I don't necessarily agree with it because
sure.
And Weapons, you'll probably hear that name again somewhere. Little teaser.
I imagine we'll hear it again tonight.
But Carly would Bring Her Back. Like, you understand where I'm coming from. Like, the exhaustive trauma candy movies. Like, same kind of thing. Like, you don't agree with me, but you understand where I'm coming from. And I understand where you're coming from with Weapons. Like, we talked about in the podcast. I said, like, I understand why you feel the way you feel, just like I'm sure to some extent you understand the way I feel about Bring Her Back. So I think when we say most disappointing, it's movies that we wanted to love. and
Yes.
it just didn't quite work. And there's elements of both. There's elements of bringing her back, like you talk about performances. Sora Wong, Sally Hawkins. I forget the kids, the other kid's name, the
Yeah,
boy.
he was good too. Yeah.
Not, and like I said, not badly directed. Certainly not. You know, like
Yeah,
there was
Weapon's
still
not
elements.
badly directed, by the way.
Yeah. So and I mean, how can you complain about the performances? Julia Garner and you know, I mean, the great
Josh
performance all the way around.
Brolin, they
Josh
were great.
Brolin and Amy Madigan legitimately may win an Oscar for this movie. Like that's how good Amy Madigan is
Yeah,
in that
maybe.
movie. But I think that's what goes to the heart of like when you talk about most disappointing is like there's just something in there that just didn't work for us. And for me, it was Bring Her Back with the Trauma Candy, and for you, it was the bloat of Weapons.
Yes, it was the bloat, Damon. It really was. It's just not because there are certain movies that are like that where on rewatches they'll never be the same. I can't remember what it was. There was a very specific horror movie where it's like you watch it the first time and it's awesome, but after that, like the trick is done. I can't remember what that movie is, but this is very much that movie. It's like the trick is over because now I know where we're going, and now I was like, oh God, the middle of this movie is aimless, and I was like, fair. And I've been obsessed with this movie all year. I've been listening to every Zach Krager interview that I can. I think he's an interesting guy, and I'll wrap this up to move on. If you're a burgeoning writer out there, please, please, please do not emulate Zach Krager's writing style. If you go and read or watch any of his interviews, he is an improvisationist, but he's also been doing that his entire career. His entire adult life, he knows how to improv. If you don't know how to improv on the level of Zach Krager, you can't write like him and you can't direct like him. Don't try. Same deal with your boy, Quentin Tarantino. If you think you know how to dissect B movies the way Quentin Tarantino does, I promise you you're wrong and you can't. So don't you can aim for it, but please know that you need to start in the basics. These guys are special. These guys have a little special kink in their brain that you don't have. Or you have some other weird kink and you need to explore that. But these guys, the way they do these things, don't try to do them.
I think part I'm not getting upset. I think part of your problem with Quentin Tarantino, and I know you're not a huge fan, but also part of it, and I think you'll admit to this, is all the people that tried to emulate him, tried to copy him, and it failed miserably. And it's like,
Yeah, but it's also his
stop.
movies too, though. We'll get to that probably in a week or so when we talk about Kill Bill. But it's also a problem with him, but it's a problem that people try to do what he does because he does it with the best actors. He does it with the best cinematographer. He does it with a lot of things that you don't get to have. And so it looks better. Same with Zach Krager. Josh Brolin was talking about in an interview. He goes, if I'm being honest with you, the cinematographer was doing most of the work. He goes, like Zach's just kind of over there freewheeling. Like it's how he likes to work as a director. It's not bad, but other people are making it that much better. If you have to really know that thing that Quentin knows, that Zach Krager knows. If you don't know those things, please just stick to the basics and find your way to improvise on those things later on as you get better. But don't start your career trying to write like those guys. That would be a massive mistake because they're outliers. Don't emulate outliers in the beginning. Find your kink, find your weirdness in the beginning. Anyway, that's a diversion. People want to hear more numbers.
Yeah. So Patrick, let's move on to our number 4 best horror film of the year. Do you want to go first? Or want me to go first?
I can go first. That's fine.
Go right ahead. Number 4.
My number 4 of the year, Damon, is Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Oh my goodness.
Let me hit the pause button and say this. My number 4 is also Frankenstein. So let's just open the talk right now.
I knew it. I fucking knew we would both have it at 4. I knew that.
My number 4 movie is also Frankenstein. So we could just open up the discussion because we both have the same movie number. And by the way, so people know we do not plan this. No. I have no idea what your list is. I have an idea what your list is, but I have no idea what your list is. You have no idea what my list is. So I'm not going to belabor the point by going through a whole diatribe about Frankenstein. Then I say the same movie. So we both picked number 4 as Frankenstein.
I was almost sure of it. And it was one of those things where I was making the list, and that's when I realized I hadn't logged it. And I was like, oh, fuck it. Like I needed to actually log it in my list of movies I've seen this year. That changed my whole list. Frankenstein, I mean, it hit me like a glacier, Damon. I watched it, I think, 5 times straight. that like straight on. Like I watched it and I watched it almost immediately again, like turned it right back on and watched it again. And then over the next 5 days, probably watched it another 3 times. Like without a doubt. The acting, the dialogue. It's maybe my favorite dialogue of the entire year, if I'm being honest with you. I think it's some of the most beautifully written prose that I've ever seen on screen. In the modern era, like truly beautiful. Um, Compelling reinterpretation. And if you listen to that podcast, you realize Frankenstein is an interpretation of the text by Guillermo del Toro, and I loved what he did with the work. Some of you are going to go, "That's not a horror movie." Would you call the original Frankenstein a horror movie? You would. Like it falls under the purview of horror. And lucky me, Guillermo del Toro came out with Frankenstein this year, so I was like, if I would have been like half-hearted about it, it might have ended up in my top 10. Damon, full-throatedly, this was a beautiful movie that really struck a chord with me, that really spoke to me on a deeper level. I don't care who directed. Yes, I love Guillermo del Toro. It's just what happened on screen to me was so beautiful and so poignant, and it was so, I think, just the horror of being is what Frankenstein's all about. I loved it.
This movie spoke to me in a lot of ways, but I think first and foremost was a reminder of how you can take original material, a book that's over 100 years old, and make it your own. Keep a lot of the elements that made the original Mary Shelley book work, but then twist and turn and make some differences and really make your own film. And part of my criticism, I compared this film to Nosferatu. Part of my criticism of Nosferatu is like, I've seen this before. It like, to
Yeah.
me, and I think it's pretty well documented here. Like, I'm a Robert Eggers fan. Like, I am a dyed in the wool Robert Eggers fan. And I didn't hate Nosferatu. I just kind of got bored by Nosferatu. Like, it was just like, all right, I've seen this before. Frankenstein was a movie that you've seen, but you've seen him. There's a million interpretations of Frankenstein out there. And I think what Guillermo del Toro nailed so well with this movie is like he took the bones of the story and kept it the same. And then he added in his little Guillermo del Toro differences. He added in little wrinkles to the story that made it different with some of the characters and Mia Goth. And like my only complaint about the movie is I wish we got more Mia Goth in that movie, but she was great in the movie. Oscar Isaac absolutely kills it, and I think Jacob Elordi deserves so much praise for that performance. Because I'll be honest, like, I know Jacob Elordi from Euphoria, and he's like this just incredibly good looking. like I can admit that. Like the dude is like just unbelievably
super
handsome.
handsome.
Like, oh my god, like intimidating. Like he's the kind of guy you stand next to and you just feel uglier standing next to him. The fact that they could transform him into this monster and it worked. And it wasn't like and by the way, you can see his face in all this. Like when you watch
Yeah.
Frankenstein, like you don't look and say, is that Jacob Elordi hidden behind 10 tons of makeup? No, you know it's Jacob Elordi. But they do it in such a good way, like with the makeup and the effects and the actual execution of the story. It just works so well, and it blends gothic drama with horror, with there's a bit of comedy in there even. Like maybe not the funniest movie of the year, but there's definitely a bit of comedy in there. And this goes to, I know, like I'm talking about my boy Quentin Tarantino, but like when you're going to make a 3-hour movie, you better make it to the point where it can be rewatchable, where it can be digestible. And I think of some of my favorite, like really, really long movies. Yeah, I think about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a movie I absolutely adore, and that movie got better the more times I saw it. I think about The Wolf of Wall Street, which sadly I've watched this week just because Rob Reiner sadly is gone. I fucking love him in that movie as Mad Max. He's so good. That movie is like I saw it in the theater. I sat through 3 hours of Wolf of Wall Street. I was like, can I go watch it again? Like right now?
Yeah.
Can I just like sit
Right.
down and go take a bathroom break and come back and watch it? That's how Frankenstein was the same way. I saw it in 4K in the theater. Let me just throw that out one more time to tout over your head.
A knife in my heart.
I saw it and I was like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. I came home, it got on Netflix. I watched it the night of, like literally the next week. I just saw it in the theater, had to watch it again. I've now watched it 3 times. I want to watch it a 4th. I love it. Everything about this movie. And I know Guillermo del Toro which is weird. We've never reviewed any of his movies on the podcast. This is the first one.
No.
But I
Yeah.
know we talk often about how much you love Guillermo. He's one of your favorites. Now I like him very much, by the way. Like I think he's awesome, but I know he's like one of your favorites.
I love him.
this movie was what we talked about during the podcast. We said it can be dangerous to have a passion project because you can lose yourself in a movie like that. Not to keep banging the drum on this, but I kind of feel like that's a little bit what happened with Nosferatu. It was such a passion project for Robert Eggers. He's like, I got to make this movie. But the way that Guillermo del Toro executed with Frankenstein just worked perfectly for me. I love this movie.
Oh my God, I loved it so much.
I'm really hoping, I don't know if they've announced it yet, but I really hope they do a physical release. Netflix, you're buying up everything right now. If you fuck that up, we're going to have words. You need to put more physical releases out there. Frankenstein.
Me and David Zaslav are on site, but for many reasons, not just that.
Yeah. Patrick, our next category, and this is where we differentiate. We are now going to talk about the worst horror movie of the year. Now, as you know on this podcast, we never go out of our way to be cruel. We never try to be combative and just say, like, we hate things to hate things. We definitely don't do that. And by the way, even the movies we absolutely dislike, we tell people, go watch it for yourself and judge. Just because I didn't like it doesn't mean you won't like it. I would never, like, the closest definition of that, I would never willingly ever go see Halloween Ends again. But go judge for yourself. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll find something I didn't. But that's what I'm saying. Like, when we say worst horror movie of the year, it's a movie that just did not work for us. And it's not disappointing, because disappointing is like where we thought we were going to love it, or we thought it would be better than it was, and it just didn't work for us. This movie, our worst movie of the year, is a movie just like you'd rather get punched in the face by I don't know, like Francis Ngannou than watch this movie again. So, Patrick, what is your worst horror movie of 2025?
I think you know where mine is. I think it's. I don't think we have the same one, because I know what you. I just know what yours is, because I know how you feel about it. My worst movie of the year. My worst movie of the year, Damon, is Fear Street Prom Queen. Okay, this is. It could have easily been biggest disappointment, because I love the Fear Street trilogy that we had a couple years back. It's not. It's the worst movie I saw this year, bar none. I've seen them all. I've seen a lot of movies that are nowhere near this list, including the one that I know you're going to say. Fear Street Prom Queen is a nonsensical piece of slop. And I'm sure, and this is not on record, but in my gut, in my heart of hearts, it was written by AI. What happens in that movie makes no sense. It's none of it's cohesive. It's what a robot thinks a prom movie does. And it's just going, well, prom movies do this, and then they do this, and then they do this, and they do this, with no intent on tying things together, no intent on making connective tissue. Poorly shot, poorly directed. I would say poorly acted. I don't want to slam those actors. They had a bad script. So a bad script only gets you what you can only put what's on paper to screen. You can try your best. I hated this movie, Damon. I hated it with all my soul. I just went, this is what's wrong with movies. If you want, and by the way, it came from Netflix, who just decided to buy Warner Brothers. Great. Whoever like wrote, direct, that whole team is not allowed to come with us to the Warner Brothers merger. They are not allowed to make movies anymore. That's a really bad movie.
That movie is pretty awful, and it could absolutely be on my list as well. And that one also kind of teeters in the disappointing category, because we loved the Fear Street trilogy. Now, to be clear, totally different team, totally different director, totally different writer. Yes. Not anywhere close to the same people that made it. But when you put that name on there, just like when we see like great Star Wars movies and we see really bad Star Wars movies, you're like, well, it still says Star Wars, so you still got to give us what we're hoping for in a Star Wars movie. And yeah, Fear Street Prom Queen kind of failed on every single level. It wasn't well written. It wasn't well executed. It wasn't well directed. It was goofy. It was a bad story. And yeah, it teeters on like just being terrible, but also being disappointed, because there was a legacy there with the first three films, which were awesome. We loved that trilogy. And it was my number one. I cheated and said number one film because it was all one story. My number one film that year. I loved Fear Street, the trilogy. This movie was the exact opposite of that. So I agree. It was pretty bad. And by the way, I want to give a little shout out to another film that I think would be our number two worst film of the year for both of us. Strangers Chapter 2. My God, what a mess that movie is. It's awful.
Oh my God. I can't believe that's what's his name? The director, who I love some of his
Rennie
movies.
Harlan. Rennie
Rennie
Harlan.
Harlan, man, who's a fucking sick ass director. I'm sorry, Rennie, but what kind of coke are you using is what I want to know because I'm
I
in.
maybe
Um,
maybe he needs to use more coke because what is going on in that movie feels like you just sleptwalk through it. But yeah,
and I want to be clear too. Making Fear Street Prom Queen my worst movie actually had nothing to do with the fact that it was tied to Fear Street. I mean, I
yeah.
was just evaluating it as a movie, and as a movie, it failed on every single level.
And I'm saying for me, it added on to why I also
Yeah, right. That made it worse.
it made it worse.
That was a second knife in the gut.
Yeah. So Patrick, you know my worst movie of the year. I go back and listen to the podcast. You just hear the sound of disdain in my voice, and that is Osgood Perkins' Keeper. Fuck this movie. I it and this is what I was talking about, like the difference with Bring Her Back being disappointing. And I said, like, I will be the first person in line for whatever the Philippou brothers do next. I think they're incredibly talented. Bring Her Back didn't work for me, but hey, that's okay. I can still see the talent there, and I want to see it. Osgood Perkins, I know he's churning out horror movies like every 6 months now. It's gotten to the point where I almost have a little, not the same. I understand. Like, oh my God, you're comparing it to that. A little bit of like The Strangers, where I'm like, I don't even want to see chapter 3. Like, I just know it's going to be terrible. We talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. We're like, we're not even going to review the third one. These movies are just not for us. I'm not quite to that point with Osgood Perkins because I thought I really liked Blackcoat's Daughter. I definitely liked Longlegs. Did not particularly like The Monkey, and I fucking hated Keeper. This movie was so nonsensical. The story was remarkably dumb, and I think the only thing that I took away from this movie that did make me just want to burn it down was Tatiana Maslany. I think she's fantastic,
She's
but
great.
what a wasted performance in just an utterly trash script and utterly trash. It was not, and by the way, it wasn't even well directed. Like, it was just a mess all the way around. Like, the visuals were not good. There was some CGI in there that looked really, really bad. The story was so utterly predictable. We talked about it. 10 minutes in,
Yeah.
we knew where it was going. Now, I'm not saying
Less.
yeah,
Genuinely
like,
less for me. I was like, I know this movie already, and
and,
was right. I was right within
and
5 minutes.
by the way, like, not every movie has to have like a Sixth Sense Usual Suspects ending. Where
Sure.
oh my God, I didn't see that coming. But at least keep me on the hook. Like we talked about Companion. We knew the twist because the dumb trailer ruined it. But the movie still subverted our expectations by all the other things they did after the big reveal, after the big twist was revealed. This movie, 5-10 minutes in, I'm like, oh, I know where it's going. I know exactly how it's going to end. I don't know like the exact particulars, but I know where this is going. And this goes back also to my criticism of chemistry. The lead characters of this movie did not, like, they were a couple that were supposedly together for a year. Not only did they not act like they knew each other, they didn't really act like they liked each other. There was zero chemistry. Tatiana Maslany had more chemistry with the bathtub she was in that movie than she actually had with the other actors.
That was my favorite part of the movie.
It was so poorly. It was just everything. And I think what I hated most about Keeper was that you had elements that you could have potentially crafted an interesting story. Potentially. What actually executed on screen was terrible. It was so predictable and it was so bad. And it's like, you talk about that movie being written by AI. It felt like this movie was like, oh, let's take elements like these 4 movies people really like, dump it into a blender, send it to AI, and here's what we get back. Because it's just bad. It's a bad story. It's bad written. The execution's bad. The acting's not great outside of Tatiana Maslany. It's a mess of a movie. And it's the first movie in a while where I walked out of the theater like pissed off that they got my $15. Like I was just like, fuck this movie.
Now, I didn't like this movie. I just didn't hate it the way you hated it. I was like, yeah, I don't like this movie. And it's wildly predictable and refused to subvert expectations. And the biggest offender of this movie is the chemistry between Tatiana Maslany and one of the Sutherland brothers who's in the movie. That is the biggest offender. I was like, this movie has no legs. I talked earlier about how Sora Wong, the whole movie like hinges on her. The whole movie Keeper hinges on you believing that this couple likes each other. Damon, I don't know if they'd met before they shot this. I mean, like literally, like just get on screen and pretend you guys have known each other for a year. And they were like, we can't pretend. He smells of manure. I can't get near him. It was that level of like repulsion. And I was like, do you mean to do that, Osgood? Do you mean to show that she hates him the whole time and that he is the least charismatic guy you've ever met who like, why would anyone date this guy? I'm not talking about the Sutherland guy. I'm talking about the character. I don't know the Sutherland guy. So I'm not making any personal attacks. The character that he played may have been the least interesting man I've ever seen in my life. And I'm supposed to believe that Tatiana Maslany, this interesting, fun, bubbly woman, is like all about him. No, it didn't. This movie didn't work on any level. It really didn't. It really didn't. I think it was pretty well shot. There's a couple of bad CG moments. It's a pretty well shot movie. I think the cinematographer did his job really well, but everything else about this movie just crashed and burned.
And mostly it's mostly story problems more than anything else. It's a story problem, but it also like we talk about like my kind of I got overwhelmed by too many trauma candy movies. This is like the let's put them in an isolated situation that when you meet these two people, you're like, yeah, they would never go spend a weekend together. Like they don't even like each other. Like you would not go spend a weekend with this person because you don't actually like. It was nonsensical from start to finish. It was predictable, and I just like I hated it. There's no better. I hated this movie. Like it's the first movie since Halloween Ends where I'm just like visibly angry watching this movie. So yeah, that was my work. No shocker there. I think everyone kind of saw that one coming. Uh, Patrick, let's go to our number 3 horror film of the year. I'll turn it over to you. What is your third best horror film of 2025?
Damon, you're in luck. My number 3 is one of your favorite movies of the entire year, and that's Bring Her Back. Oh my God. I watched it again last night. I kind of had a marathon of movies. I really wanted to keep these movies fresh in my mind, especially the top 3. This was very important for me that the top 3 I was clear on. Bring Her Back. I know you didn't like it, and I know why you didn't like it, and it makes total sense to me. You're done with that level of storytelling. I get it. But boy, at every turn, this movie was fantastic. I think the Philippou brothers are great directors. But where they put the camera and why, the gore, intense. In this movie is so much more intense than Talk to Me, and I love Talk to Me, by the way, number 1 movie that year. But this movie is so intense and gory and violent and nasty. It really reminded me of like French Extremity. It really had that feeling to it. By the way, Australia has their own kind of extremity movement with movies like Wolf Creek and stuff where they really go hard. I felt like this was such a refined version of that. It was just like, hey, we can do all that, but better. I love the story. I know you bumped up against the story and you were like, I don't see why we need all this in here. The story's compelling. It's tragic. It's heavy. And you know, I love a heavy, sad movie, Damon. And I just thought the acting across the board was tremendous. This movie haunted me all the way back whenever it came out. I think it came out early summer. And I was just like, God damn, this movie just is not leaving my brain. It's not leaving my brain. And all year, I was kind of just, I had this running tab of like movies, Companion, Sinners, Bring Her Back, 28 Years Later, like all these movies were just kind of circling. But Bring Her Back was like, it had this knife in me. And it was like, don't you dare forget me. And then when I revisited it last night, I was like, I see why now. I think it's a very brilliant movie. And when I tell you it was almost my number 2, I was almost sure it was going to be my number 2. It's that good to me. And I know, Damon, the rebuttal is, yeah, but I hated it. I know, but I'm telling you, everything was in its place. Performances, Sally Hawkins, holy shit. Sora Wong makes my best performance of the year. So holy fucking shit. I loved everything about this movie, Damon. There's not a thing I didn't like about this movie.
I'm not really gonna even say much because it was already listed. I already gave my
Yeah.
criticism why I didn't like this movie, but yeah, I mean, again, like I said, a lot of people like this one. It just did not work for me, and I understand. Like it feels like this year in particular, I'm much more the contrarian. Usually, you're the contrarian. Usually, you're the one
Usually.
who's like the world loves it. I do not. And I love that about you because you make me think critically about movies that maybe I would enjoy. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you bring up a really good point why it's not working. So I appreciate that you're a contrarian in that way. Usually it's that way. Usually you're the guy who's like, everyone loved it, didn't work for me. This is the one where it's like just everyone else loved it, just didn't work for me.
It feels like how I felt with Late Night with the Devil. I mean, you couldn't find someone that said anything bad about it, except for my buddy who was sitting next to me in the theater. He was the only other person who was like, "This movie sucks." The rest of the world's like, "You can't. That's my favorite movie of the year." And I was like,
Yeah,
"I don't see what you're seeing. I don't see it." Like, and I
yeah,
tried with that movie multiple times, as you did with Bring Her Back.
yeah. And that was my number one horror film that year, last year. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that just didn't work for me, and I've already given my reasons. So I'm not going to expound on that. So I'm just going to move on to my number three film now. Let me preface this statement by saying that I purposefully put this movie at number three because I know what your number two is. Not to spoil for the audience. I am spoiling it for the audience because if you've listened to this podcast for more than 2 episodes, you probably know where we're going here. This is the worst kept secret in the world with our top 5 movies of the year. So my number three movie, and I did this on purpose because I wanted to flip it a little bit. My number three movie of the year is 28 Years Later. Now, this is probably the most divisive film of the year in terms of
Probably.
like overwhelmingly like 50-50. Like there was no 70-30 split in this one. It was either you loved it or you hated it or it was just utterly disappointing. I heard a lot of people say I loved the first half, hated the second half. Heard people say I liked the second half, hated the first half. A lot of people say I hated the characters. It didn't ring for me the same way that 28 Weeks Later did, or even 28 Days Later or 28 Weeks Later, which by the way 28 Weeks Later has really nothing to do with this film. It's almost like a retcon. That movie doesn't exist in this universe. What Danny Boyle and Alex Garland managed to do with this movie was take, once again, the zombie genre, which I know technically the rage zombies are not zombies, they're still technically alive, but we're just going to call them zombies because they're mindless killing freaks. They reinvented the zombie genre with 28 Days Later, which we reviewed. Brilliant, still holds up. Love that movie to death. 28 Years Later kind of feels like a sequel, kind of. But once again, Alex Garland and Danny Boyle reinvented this genre for a second time. Do you realize how freaking hard that is to do for a genre that we've seen in a billion zombie movie? And by the way, I'm a zombie movie. I'm a George Romero. I lived in Pittsburgh for years. I am a George Romero diehard. I love zombie movies. One of my favorite genre of horror movies. But it's been done a billion times. One of the reasons we praised Talk to Me a couple years ago, it was a possession movie like we had never seen before. What 28 Days Later and then to a different extent 28 Years Later does, it reinvents what zombie movies can be. This movie it does take place a lot in two halves. The first half is one part of the movie and the second, it's definitely that. But when you think about the execution of the first half, when you're getting a lot of Aaron Taylor Johnson as a protective dad with his son going and dealing with the fallout from this zombie apocalypse, and then the second half of the movie is more of like it's tragic, it's sad, it it pulls at every emotion, and then you get to like Ray Fiennes' character, who is brilliant, and I mean the guy is an incredible actor. There's no don't need to droll on about Ray Fiennes, he's great, but like I loved him by the end of this movie. Like I've always liked Ray Fiennes, but like this movie was like, oh my god, this dude is just off the charts good, and that character was so well written. And I've had more of a love relationship with Alex Garland than you have, and you're a little bit more hit and miss with him.
He was my only X factor. I was like, how's he gonna fuck this up?
Yeah, I would say I'm like 60-40 because he did make Men in that movie. You know how I feel about that movie. But yeah, generally I've liked his stuff, but he gets it, man. The writing in this movie is sharp, and I'm like genuinely excited for whatever else they do. Like Danny Boyle's an incredible filmmaker, but I think him and Alex Garland really do make a great team together. So 28 Years Later just absolutely killed it for me. So that is my number three. And by the way, once again, just mentioning it, my number three movie with a purpose, because I wanted to open some discussion here. So that is my number three movie.
Yeah, it's your number three, Damon. Guess what? It's my number two. So here we are, right? My number two movie of the year is 28 Years Later. Another movie that would refuse to leave my mind. I mean, it shook me to my core as what it said. And I really feel like the detractors of this movie, I don't want to say they like, oh, they didn't get it. I'm not saying they didn't get it. Maybe they just don't care. And and that could be the honest truth is like, yeah, I got it, pal. I didn't like the package that it was put in. This movie is about the children of 9/11 colliding with the children of COVID. And only Danny Boyle and Alex Garland can tackle that the way they can. The way they can. And that's another thing too. I'm a huge Danny Boyle guy. God, I show up for everything he does because he's interesting. He does it. He does everything from the Danny Boyle angle. I can't explain it. He's really one of these directors that just refuses to do things the way everybody else does them. And I said, I go, whatever we're getting into, I have no idea what this movie's going to be about, but I know it's not going to be 28 days later. And what I kept hearing from people was how it was nothing like the original. And I was like, no fucking shit. Look who's doing it.
Yeah.
Like they think because it's the original director and the original writer, they're just going to go and do it again. They clearly don't know anything about those guys. And I know this all sounds like film snob shit. I know it does. But if you track those guys' records, they don't play that shit. They're like, no, if I'm coming back to this, it's because I have a completely fresh idea. And like he didn't even intend to make 28 Days Later to have anything to do with 9/11, but it was wildly prophetic. It ended up having a lot to do with 9/11, and he never even intended it to do that. But it is one of those post 9/11 movies. 28 Years Later is a post-COVID movie, if you believe we're in post-COVID. He's like, hey, like this is the world now. And we're building on everything that happened then. But the world now looks like nothing like the world that happened then. And they captured that so well. And then the other half of the movie is about loss. It's about grieving and letting go of something. And it, in my opinion, was very much tied to all of the pain and suffering that's happened during COVID and during 9/11. It's a love letter to all that stuff, and it was beautifully done, beautifully executed. You talk about Ray Fiennes. Holy shit. You're right. I liked him before that. I loved him after. Now, the one last thing, Damon, and I won't ignore it because everyone's waiting to scream at me going, but that fucking ending, but that fucking ending. Yeah, that's a Danny Boyle fucking ending. That's a classic Danny Boyle ending. If you know the man's work, he always ends on a way that you were never going to see. He always ends in a way that makes you feel funny and weird. And I'm not going to spoil it here, but I know some of you are screaming that the ending was ridiculous. The ending had meaning, and it was planted through the entire movie. It's there, clear as day that it's coming. And when it comes, it throws you off because it's tonally nothing like the rest of the movie. That's punk fucking rock. That's how you do that shit. You go, yeah, I know I gave you this sad, sweeping drama and this action-packed, blood-soaked, zombie movie, and now I'm going to give you this. And if you'll continue to follow me down the line, and I have seen the trailer for Bone Temple, I can't wait for what they teed up at the end of this movie that they're rolling right into with Nia DaCosta's Bone Temple. Sign me the fuck up, Damon. This movie fucking rips. I love this movie.
And also to your point, this is not a cop out. This is more of just like an explanation when people are like the ending, the ending. You also got to remember this was made with the idea in mind. This was going to be a trilogy. Like they were not like they never hid that fact. Like they never said we're just making one movie and we're out. Like, and I understand like when you go to see a movie, maybe you don't watch all the interviews, you don't read all the stuff online, but it was pretty well out there that this was part one of a grander design of three films. Just like when you saw, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, you already knew they were going to do two more. Like, so the ending,
and they were already shooting part two. Like they were in the midst of shooting and finishing it.
They shot it back to back, literally back to back. Like literally, they were shooting like as 28 Years Later was in post production. They were already shooting 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. So, yeah. So I'm not excusing. I'm just saying you got to remember, like this was part of a grander design. This was part of a 3-part story they were telling. So, yeah, I love this movie. I've watched it a couple times. Saw it in the theater, watched it at home on 4K, and it's just brilliant, and I love it. And I'm not saying you're wrong for not loving it, but this movie worked for me on every level. So, yeah, I love 28 Years Later. And to your point, I know we're kind of skipping around some of our categories. I'll just go and give my number 2 film because this was the other divisive film. I knew it was going to be in there, much like Bring Her Back was for you. My number 2 film of the year is Weapons. And by the way, going back, not to rehash what we just talked about, but you said like Weapons wasn't a poorly made movie, and you are looking forward. You'll look forward to Resident Evil, which is Zach Crager's next movie, and he said that's a totally different movie than anything he's ever made before. Really, as a 2-film filmography, but still. The reason why I liked Weapons, well, there's a lot of reasons why I liked Weapons, but one of the biggest reasons I liked Weapons is we always talk about one of the strongest reasons to enjoy great writing in horror, great writing in filmmaking in general, is subverting expectations. Weapons subverted my expectations in ways that I didn't totally see coming. I thought I had an idea where this story was going. The trailers, they give you the premise, a classroom of kids go missing one night, they ran out into the night and never returned. And at the beginning of the film, you kind of get a hint, like, what, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And you do this movie in chapters. And from Julia Garner's character to Josh Brolin's character, some other characters, the way this unravels and the way the puzzle pieces get put together in this movie just totally worked for me. And I'm not going to lie and say I do understand what you're talking about with the bloat in the middle of this movie. I do. I sympathize with that when we reviewed it. But rewatching it a couple times since then, like, there's just so many moments in this movie where I'm just like, oh, that moment. Oh, here's a moment. Here's this. And then you get to Amy Madigan's performance, and she's absolutely brilliant in this movie. I didn't even know it was her. That's how good she is. Like, I know Amy Madigan. I love Gone Baby Gone, one of my favorite movies, and she's in that movie. Like, oh my God, this is the same person? She's brilliant in this movie. And then Julia Garner, who I adore, she's great in this movie as well. And I think sounds like a weird compliment to give a movie, but this movie is like wildly hilarious too. Like, I did not expect this movie to be funny. Like, it felt like it was going. I mean, you're talking about 28 missing children. How's that going to be funny? They made it funny. Like, there was legitimately like comedic parts in this movie, and then the ending. Man, it just works so well for me. It's like a fucking fever dream of insanity in that final like 10-15 minutes. I loved everything about this movie, and I know I liked Barbarian. It was also my top 5 that year, and you absolutely hated that movie, but I enjoyed it. But this, to me, even though I know you're right, that Zach Cregger is very much about improv. He comes from an improv comedy background. This movie felt more cohesive to me than Barbarian. Like, I liked Barbarian. I genuinely did. But this felt like a great next step for Zach Cregger because all the little things I could criticize about Barbarian, it felt like to me he fixed in Weapons, and the story is great, and the final like 30 minutes, like, honestly might be my favorite like 30-minute span of film this year. Like, just that final thing, like when you get to where you know where the story's going, and there's some fucking brutal moments in that final third, like really cruel, brutal moments where you're like, God, this is also like tragically sad, and man, it kind of makes you angry. And it just, the way they execute, and I know you judge a movie as a whole, which is part of the reason this movie didn't work for you because it was bloated in the middle. But that ending, man, that last 30 minutes is like a fucking gut punch. I mean, it is literally just like over and over and over again. And so I just loved it. And so I very purposely said I did put it number 2. It was 28 years later the whole time. I flipped it. I'm not even denying I flipped it because I wanted to have a conversation about it because I knew we were going to have 28 years later in our list. So
you're saying 28 years later is your true number 2?
Probably so, yeah. But I wanted to get, because I wanted to flip it just so we didn't have the exact same list.
No, I think yeah, I see where you're going with that, and I'll stick to positives. You heard my criticisms earlier. I'll stick to positives for Weapons. It is a vast improvement over Barbarian, first and foremost, a vast improvement because I will die on that hill. That's a bad movie. I think. And what I learned later on, after watching the movie, was that Zach Cregger, this was sort of a reflection on losing one of his best friends, which was one of the guys on The Whitest Kids You Know, which is the show that made Zach Cregger a known commodity. He lost one of his friends who was part of that show, and this was his way to kind of process it. In the moments where that hits, it hits very well. And I go, oh, I see it, especially in the Alex story, which is weird because the Alex story is about a kid. It's not about missing kids, because to me, when the kids just all of a sudden disappear, that's a sudden death in your life. I understand that. But it was the kid aspect where the kid was dealing with, and I don't want to get too much into the spoilers of it in case you haven't seen it, but what the kid is dealing with to me really, really hit home. It's by far the strongest story out of all those chapters in the movie. And then the ending is fun. It's just fun. And I think Zach Cregger's a fun guy. I watch him and I go, oh, he's actually kind of a charming and nice guy, clearly, or at least he has a reputation as a nice guy. And so I saw a lot of potential in this movie, especially with the story of Alex. It was especially strong. And I was like, cool, there's the movie. There it is. There's the heart and soul of it right there. And I think you nailed that bit of it. For sure. And he nailed the end. The end is fun. I'm not a hater. The end is great. The end's the kind of end you're kind of hoping for. And without that end, I wouldn't have had anything good to say about this movie, truth be told, but that end really drives it home. And so I think Zach Kreger keeps learning and growing as a filmmaker. He's already saying Resident Evil is not only nothing like these movies, he's even writing it differently. Like it's got very clear structure to it. It's got A, B's, and C's and outlines and all that stuff that he did not use with the Barbarian or Weapons. So it's going to look and seem very different. He's a very good director. He's got a natural eye for where things are interesting. So, I mean, it's only looking up from here, is my point.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I loved it. I thought it was really well done. And this is another one, much like 20 years later, where it's like you either loved it or you hated it. There was not a whole lot of in between on Weapons. So I get it. Before we get to our number one film, let's talk real quick about some honorable mentions. There were some pretty solid films that didn't make our lists for the top 10. I already mentioned a couple of them in conversation because they were in your top 10 or in my top 10. So, Patrick, would you like to read off your honorable mentions for 2025?
Absolutely, Damon. One of them, and this is in no particular order, but I did save the last one because I want to explain it a little bit, but in no particular order. Push, by our buddies Justin Powell and David Charbonnier. Great psychological supernatural thriller that I highly recommend you check out. That's on Shudder. Hey, Shudder. The Toxic Avenger, one of Damon's favorite movies of the year, because honestly, probably the best trauma, actually best executed trauma movie I've ever seen, and I had a lot of fun with it. As a trauma guy, it was one of those ones that really hit me. Predator Badlands, a lot of fun. Good, clean fun at the theater. I think a lot of people were mad that it was clean fun, but hey, got tons of alien blood and gore and tons of kills. They just happened to be from non-humans. But I thought that was a very fun movie this year. Together was also on that honorable mentions list because I thought it was a very solid movie this year. I had a lot of fun with it. It probably could have gone on the top 10 if I'm honest with you. I think it barely got pushed out. I think when I realized Frankenstein wasn't on my list. So that's the only reason it ended up in honorable mentions. But my last honorable mention, Damon, is the documentary Chain Reactions. I did a little video that's on my I think it's on both my Instagram, my TikTok, and if not, I need to put it on my Instagram. Chain Reactions is a documentary about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's not any old documentary. It's not like the making of, and oh, we're going to talk to Daniel Pearl and we're going to talk to this one actor about how hard it was to shoot, blah, blah, blah. It's not that at all. Chain Reactions is, I believe, 4 or 5 different artists from all different types of disciplines, mostly film. But the first one, for instance, is Patton Oswalt. There's also Karen Kusama's in there, Takashi Miike, the legendary Japanese director. All these folks talk about their personal relationship with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. As a die-hard fan of that movie, as I absolutely think it's one of the best movies of all time, to see people dissect it, and these are very talented artists, dissect it, was such a treat that I highly, highly, highly recommend if you can get your hands on a copy of it, to get your hands on a copy of Chain Reactions and really see it from the perspective, from a bunch of different perspectives of why this film resonates over 50 years later and it still won't go away. We're still pining for more Texas Chainsaw, even though nothing has ever come close to the original. Nothing. But they talk about why the original is so special, and I just loved that.
Yeah, it's I haven't seen the documentary yet, but I know of it. I'm looking forward to watching it at some point. And yeah, I mean, you know my opinion on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's one of the greatest films ever made, and yeah, that's,
Easily.
no joke there. So for me, honorable mentions, I'll rattle them off, talk about them real quickly here. My honorable mentions include Begonia, which obviously I know was in your list, could have easily been in my top 10. I slided down slightly down, largely because I was like, I'm not really sure it's totally horror. It's kind of is. So I decided to go honorable mentions for that. Silent Night, Deadly Night, as you mentioned, your top 10. I love that movie. Could have easily been in my top 10. Probably could have been number 10. I just decided to go to Marshmallow to kind of give a little shine to an indie horror movie like that. And I know technically Silent Night, Deadly Night is too, but that actually got a theatrical release. Marshmallow certainly did not. A movie called Dark Match, which was a Shudder original, which takes place weirdly in the world of professional wrestling, a profession I actually used to do years ago. And it was a really fun movie. Starred Stephen Orr from The Walking Dead, and Chris Jericho's in it, also a professional wrestler. It was just really fun. Like I was surprised. Like I watched it thinking, oh God, here we go. It's probably not going to be great. And it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. Hard Eyes, obviously, once again, in your top 10 list. I really enjoyed Hard Eyes. Don't need to opine about that one again. A movie that I liked, and literally, I think I'm the only person on earth who liked this movie, Opus. A24's Opus. I loved it. I thought it was great. You know, Iowa Debris and John Malkovich. To this day, I think I'm like the one person that watched and enjoyed that movie, but I just weirdly loved it. I wish I could explain it, but I really enjoyed it. Drop, a thriller that very much like was kind of middle of the range. A lot of people liked it, a lot of people hated it. I really enjoyed it. Megan, I can't remember Megan Tahi. I can't remember how to pronounce her name.
Yeah, I don't remember her name.
From White Lotus. And Brendan Sklenar, who of course is from 1923, and he's in that new movie, The Housemaid, too. I think the one with Sydney Sweeney and yeah. So it's a fun movie, and I'm not even going to deny, like, it's ridiculous. Like the biggest criticism is like no one would stay on a date this long. You're not wrong, but I still enjoyed it. Also had Dangerous Animals, a movie I know you didn't love, but I thought was a pretty fun, original, like serial killer movie mixed with some sharks. Notwithstanding the really, really, really bad final scene.
And written by your boy who wrote Keeper, by the way.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. And then finally, Final Destination Bloodlines, a movie that we both really enjoyed. It kind of reinvigorated. We didn't reinvent it because, good Lord, that franchise has always made money. We were shocked they didn't make 9 more of these after the last 2 that we absolutely hated, but somehow they stopped making them for a decade or whatever it was, 14 years, 11 years, whatever it was. So Final Destination Bloodlines, really fun, reinvigorated that franchise, and I'm sure we're going to get more. I don't know if it's going to be the same or good or better, but I really enjoyed Final Destination Bloodlines.
Final Destination Bloodlines was almost on the list. It just got bumped.
Yeah. So, Patrick, it is now time for our number 1 horror film of the year. Anyone who has listened to this podcast already knows the answer. I'm not going to belabor the point because we have the same number 1 film. And if you didn't, I'd be like, what are you doing? What's going on here?
Yeah, my number 1's Keeper, Damon.
Yeah. All right. Podcast over, guys. Been a good 5 years. Appreciate it. Our shared number 1 film of the year, to absolutely no one's surprise, is Ryan Coogler's absolutely fucking brilliant film, Sinners. I know, it's the lowest hanging fruit in the room. Everyone's like, oh my God, we know you guys have tongue-lapped this movie over and over and over again this year. It's because it's that fucking good. Sinners is brilliant. It is my number 1. I know it's your number 1, Patrick. It is our shared number 1 film of the year.
Unbelievable movie. And if you dipped in on our top 5 horror films of the last 5 years, you know that made our number 1. So it was the de facto number 1 this year. There was no way that the best movie of the last 5 years wouldn't be number 1 movie this year because it came out this year. And boy, oh boy, every time I watched it, it got better. I'm going to, instead of like belaboring how much I love it, because it's a perfect movie top to bottom. I don't give a damn what anybody says. I'm going to go after the criticisms first. The first criticism is it's not a horror movie. Fuck off. It's a movie about vampires. Next question. Like, just get out of here with that. It's a horror movie. If that is your criticism of this movie, you probably don't watch horror movies. It's a vampire movie. There's blood, guts, gore. Vampires bite the shit out of people. It's a fucking horror movie, okay? Next one. It's a ripoff of From Dusk Till Dawn. Okay, look, I've seen the arguments, and Ryan Coogler said very clearly it's certainly inspired this movie. He mentioned it, and a lot of movies get inspired by other movies. Before they get to, was it the titty twister in Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah.
Tell me how it's a horror movie before they get there. Tell me how it's a horror movie before the vampires fucking turn. It's like not a horror movie for about, 90 minutes until literally the final sequence of the movie is everyone turns into vampires and shit starts going crazy. It's just a thriller. It's just a thriller comedy until it isn't. So miss me with that shit. They're whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like these comparisons don't work for me.
My biggest, I combated that argument when it happened on TikTok and other places. I was like, yes, it's a vampire movie that happens to take place in a bar type setting. That's literally the only
Yeah,
comparison. It's like,
but
yes,
Blade has done that. You
yeah,
know, they're like other movies do that. You know, you could argue The Lost Boys. There's barely a drop of blood in that movie. When I used to show that movie to my 3-year-old, and all I had to do was like stop the part where they bite the guy's head open. Otherwise, they could watch the whole movie. There's no blood in that movie at all, and no one here is going to tell me Lost Boys ain't a horror movie.
yeah, but like the idea that it's vampires and it takes place in like a bar type setting. I mean, yeah, but you could do that a million different ways. Doesn't mean they're similar. And by the way, it's not wrong to be inspired by a movie that, generally speaking, most people really enjoy. And I would agree. Like, From Dusk Till Dawn is a crime thriller for about an hour and 15 minutes, and it transforms into a horror movie. Sinners is in a lot of ways horrific all the way through when you really understand the subject matter, but it's also fun. It's just well acted. So yeah, I would agree on that criticism. Like, I get it, I understand, but to me, you're really simplifying what these movies are. If you're just like, oh, they're exactly alike, then maybe you didn't watch the movies because they are nothing alike. And by the way, I know you didn't love From Dusk Till Dawn. I love From Dusk Till Dawn. I think it's one
I
of
love
the
the end of Dusk Till Dawn. I love the end. And the rest of it's
but
kind of boring. And if somebody says that about Sinners, I go, oh, okay, I get it. Or if they say I loved all the stuff leading up to the vampire stuff, okay, cool. But it's still a horror movie. That's my point.
yeah. Did you have any other criticisms you want to fire back on?
Damon, you better take over, or I'll be here all night.
This movie, there's just so many layers of what I like about Sinners, and my most viral video I've ever posted on TikTok, which I still weirdly get comments on. I think it's got like the most views I've ever had on TikTok, was us talking about why we like the vampires and the motivation of the vampires. It wasn't just very one note generic characters, and you know they came at their victims with a mission of assimilation, not destruction. You know, they weren't coming at them saying we're going to kill you and just leave you for dead. Like, they were like, we want you to join us. And yes, we can get into deeper themes of racism and
Yeah.
and that period of time in the 1930s. All that we can absolutely discuss that, but the motivations and the execution of the vampires in this movie just felt so different than what I'd really seen in other vampire movies. Jack O'Connell, like, we're going to talk about Michael B. Jordan, we're going to talk about Delroy Lindo, we're going to talk about Haley Steinfeld. They all deserve huge flowers for this movie, but Jack O'Connell deserves more than he's probably getting. He is so good as the lead
Oh yeah, I
vampire.
think it broke him out, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to be in 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. He's in that movie coming up, and I mean, he's just a great actor. But like, that portrayal of a vampire, like, I think about my favorite vampires on screen. Of course, you're going to talk about Kiefer Sutherland in Lost Boys. You're going to talk about Bill Paxton in Near Dark. You're going to talk about
Duncan Regehr.
Duncan Regehr in Monster Squad, or Danny Houston in 30 Days a Night.
Great.
Jack O'Connell kind of redefined what I thought a vampire could be. And the last thing I'll say about this movie, and I think actually this was also a criticism. So I guess technically I'm kind of answering a criticism. This movie is also a musical
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. But the music is so impactful and so meaningful to this movie that you couldn't eliminate it. You couldn't take those scenes out of the movie and have the same movie. I own this soundtrack on vinyl, and I've listened to it like 5 times front to back. And every time a song comes on, I'm like, oh, I remember that moment from the movie. And it's not just like a scene like, yeah, I remember when they played that song "No Way Out" during Rocky IV when he's like sad about Apollo Creed dying. I'm not talking about a great montage moment like Bloodsport when they play that song during the movie, or like "You're the Best Around" from the Karate Kid. I'm not talking about those movies like you just remember a song from a movie. I'm talking about songs that make the movie. Like, you could not have made A Star Is Born without that moment with "Shallow" with Lady Gaga singing with Bradley Cooper. Like, that made the movie. That made the connection in that movie. You could not have made this movie without the music. This movie is, and Miles Catton, another guy who should be getting a lot more credit than he is. I think he's probably going to win an Oscar for best song this year,
I think
and
so.
rightfully so, for "I Lied to You." But like, that's another one. Guy who never acted a day in his life, and he came in and absolutely killed in this movie. This movie is just it's perfect. I don't really
If
have a true criticism of this movie, like from start to finish, and even with the bonus scene, which we're not going to talk about because we're not going to spoil it. Like, even that, I was like, "Fuck yes, Fuck yes, this movie. Like it's just it's everything I want in a movie in one like and by the way, like last thing I'll say, we always talk about our favorite horror films of the year, and you and I differentiate a lot of times our favorite horror films of the year are just our favorite films of the year. Sometimes they don't match up. Sometimes our favorite horror film is like our number 4 film or whatever, like however you want to judge it. When the Oscars happen in 2026, I'm going to be the most torn person on earth watching that show because Sinners and One Battle After Another are two of the best films I've ever seen, period. Like, not in 2025, yeah. Period. It's going to kill me to know that only one of them can win a lot of those awards.
I know.
Sinners is that good. Like, Sinners isn't just a good horror movie. It's a fucking great film. I love it. Love everything about it.
Damon, I'm so glad you're talking about that because, in my opinion, the best picture race is between Sinners and One Battle After Another. It really is because I evaluate a movie as a whole when it comes to best picture. It can't just be one of those things. It's got to be kind of all of those things. Sinners is all of those things. And to me, the edge that it has over One Battle After Another is the music. Like the music, which is, as you so rightfully said, is so important to the movie. Like I think of Delroy Lindo, like just singing that little song, thinking about his friend who was lynched. They're just driving along, and that's what I love about this. As yes, it's a musical, but they don't stop the movie to sing the music. It's part of the. It means something to the movie. It's a very different kind of musical in that respect. Like even just little moments like that, it's like that's the only thing actually missing from One Battle After Another is that the music is incredible in this movie, but otherwise the editing is sharp, the acting is sharp, the cinematography is sharp, the art design is sharp, the costuming is sharp, the direction, Ryan Coogler's direction. When he was rifling off all the movies that he had made and at what age he'd made them, you're looking at an absolute prodigy. The man's only 38 years old, and he made Sinners at 38. I'm sorry, what? Like, are you kidding me? And everything behind it is incredible. He made like Wakanda Forever at like 36, 32 or something. Like he made Fruitvale Station in his 20s.
This is, I think, also I have to marvel about this, Patrick. You talk about that with Ryan Coogler. This is his first totally original movie.
Fully original, yes, his own idea.
Fruitvale Station is based on a true story. We know Black Panther, obviously based on a comic book, and of course Creed, which is based in the Rocky universe. Yeah. This was Ryan Coogler's first totally original story, totally original everything, totally original screenplay. He had no basis, and I know we talked a lot during that review how much his uncle influenced him because his uncle grew up in that area and taught him about blues music and things like that. He's talked about very openly, and it's kind of like a love letter to his family in a lot of ways. This is like, I mean, that's so hard to do when and by the way, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with adapting material. There's certainly nothing wrong with adapting material. You can make some brilliant adaptations. But for this to be his first original story, and by the way, to me, that ratchets up the pressure even more because we already know he's a great filmmaker. He made Black Panther into an Oscar-nominated film. He made Creed into what, just a totally brilliant reinvention of the Rocky franchise. Fruitvale Station is one of the most powerfully depressing movies, and I mean that in a good way. Like, it's just so sad that the way that movie plays out, and it's based on a true story. Sinners is based on nothing. It's just his story. It's just his way he interpreted his family and the relationship with his family and the growing up in a
history
and racism and all these kind of things. It's just there's nothing I don't like about this movie, Patrick. Like there's literally and like I said, and I think comparing it to One Battle After another thing that both movies have such strength in is the performances. Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Chase Infinity, fucking gold statues all around. Sinners, Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, Haley Steinfeld, Jack O'Connell, gold statues all the way around. I can't pick this movie apart and say there's something I dislike about it. I wish I could. I wish I could be like, well,
yeah,
no.
And for the people out there going, see, you haven't talked about horror in a while. You just talking about how great the movie is. Jack O'Connell's vampire design is fucking perfect. It's so good. I haven't liked a vampire design like really since the 80s where I was like, ooh, I like that. I like the 30 Days of Night one, but I wouldn't call it like one of my favorites. I love like the vampires in Lost Boys. I love the vampires in Fright Night. And I felt like Jack O'Connell's vampire in this movie was almost like a marriage of those things. Like it was so, and it's so iconic, and the glowing red eyes and just the beautiful imagery. And I was like, holy shit. Like it's everything you ever wanted from a vampire. And he's very seductive, but he's sinister under the surface. You listen to the subtext of what he's saying. He wants Sammy's powers. He wants what Sammy has, this gift of song that can unite space and time and generation after generation. He wants that from Sammy so he can recontact his world because he's undead. He wants to contact his elders. He wants to contact his future family, and he wants to take from Sammy something. But he wraps up in this pretty little bow because he's a very seductive and interesting vampire. Like on just the vampire level, this movie kicks fucking ass. Like I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that this isn't a horror movie. Go back and do your homework. It's a fucking horror movie, and it's one of the best ones out there. It's one of the best movies out there. I mean, Lost Boys, Damon, one of my favorite movies of all time, of all time. Sinners, one of my favorite movies of all time. What do they have in common? Vampire movies.
And also, last thing I'll say here before we get on to end the show and talk about our most anticipated films real quick. The way that this, like, I love when the writing is so sharp in a movie like this where you don't see what's coming next, but you also can understand in a weird way sympathize with all the characters. Like I'm not saying you should root for Jack O'Connell's vampire. There's a sinister nature to him and like but the way he approaches this situation under the guise of acceptance
Hmm.
is so different than what you really, and that kind of speaks to Lost Boys as well. Like in Lost Boys, like they're not, like they're not. I mean, yes, the Lost Boys in that movie are, killing machines, but the main characters, they're like, we want you to be part of our team,
Yeah. They want to bring you
and
in.
and that is also, even though it's manipulative and it's not genuine because we know really what the character's after is Sammy's powers. He doesn't hit them with the guys like we're just going to kill you and take it. They're like, we want you to give it to us willingly.
Hmm.
That's a whole other approach. And that comes down to the writing. That comes down to the script, and that comes down to Ryan Coogler. I fucking love this movie. Everything about it. So yeah, Sinners is number one. No shocker there. Anyone's listening to the show knows we have absolutely tongue lashed this movie the entire year. So Sinners, there you go, buddy. Your flowers. Last thing, Patrick, we got to get out of here on this. We are going to name our three most anticipated horror films of 2026. Now, this list can come back to bite us because we've had a couple of times where we
It's
anticipate
happened
something.
before.
Nosferatu was one for me last year. I was like, man, I can't wait. And then at the end of the year, I was like, yeah, I didn't like this movie. So, Patrick, do you have your most anticipated horror films of 2026? And it's a pretty big list of things you could put on here.
It's a decent list, but do you mind going first? I have a feeling we have a similar one, and then if we do, I can just take that off my list because I have four. But
Okay.
I have a feeling we have at least one shared one.
So my three, starting out, and we originally just do one, but then I was like, well, one of them is going to be a movie that comes out in like 2 weeks, so it's kind of like a cheat. So
Right.
my top three anticipated horror films of 2026 are 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Should be no shock considering how we just talked about
And
20
that was
years
my
later.
similar one as well. Yes.
Nia DaCosta, she did a great job with Candyman, and I'm genuinely excited to see what she does with the Alex Garland script in her way. I think it's going to be really fun to watch. Can't lie about it, Patrick. I am excited for Scream 7. I know it's generic, and I know not everyone loved the Scream movies, and I'm not even going to get into politics of what happened to Melissa Barrera and bringing back Nev Campbell and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, the one franchise that has never totally let me down. I don't love all of them. I think Scream 5 has problems. I like Scream 6 better than Scream 5. But Scream has been traditionally a very strong franchise. It's well documented. That's the movie that got me back into horror in the 90s. Kevin Williamson returning, Nev Campbell returning. I don't know how they're going to incorporate all these other characters that are coming back, Matthew Lillard and all these other guys, but I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited to see what they do, and they're going back to the roots with Kevin Williamson, so I don't even know it's going to be good. I just know I'm excited to see what they do with it. And number three for me is Robert Edgar's Werewolf. Well documented on this show, Patrick. I fucking love werewolf movies. It's maybe one of my favorite genres. Problem is, not a lot of good ones out there.
Very
You know,
few.
you get Silver Bullet, you get Dog Soldiers, but there's a lot of other dog shit werewolf movies. Where Robert Eggers, I think, went wrong with Nosferatu was staying too faithful to the original source material because he was kind of obsessed with it and he wanted to make it. And I get it, just didn't work for me. This is an original story. Yes, it's a period piece, and I'm not a huge period piece guy, but Robert Eggers, what he did with The Witch, I fucking love that movie. I love The Witch. I'm genuinely excited to see what he does with Werewolf or Werewolf, or however you're going to pronounce it, because it's not spelled the traditional way. The cast looks great, and like I said, this kind of speaks to the Philby brothers to Bring Her Back. I didn't love Bring Her Back, but man, I can't wait to see what they do next. I didn't love Nosferatu, but boy, am I excited to see what Robert Eggers does with Werewolf.
Damon, you actually had two that I had similar with, which is Bone Temple, which is coming out in a few weeks, so stay tuned for that, and Werewolf, because I'm a Robert Eggers stan at this point. I've liked everything he's put out. I genuinely have. I got the Nosferatu 4K upstairs, but when I heard original Robert Eggers werewolf movie that takes place in like the 12th century, I was like, yes, on all accounts, like absolutely fucking yes. And I've seen a couple of stills and the cast looks like absolute hell. And I'm like, oh God, this movie's going to stink out loud. I'm going to smell the manure just stomped in the streets. I know Robert Eggers can pull you into a movie and make you believe you're in that time and space. I know he's not for everybody. I get it. But boy, does he make movies not like anybody. Like he really just can do it like no one else. My other two films that I'm super excited for, Evil Dead Burn coming out this year. I loved Evil Dead Rise. I'm realizing a lot of people didn't love it the way you and I did. I loved it. I thought it was great. Evil Dead Burn is from the director. I forgot to pull up his name, but he did that movie Infested, which was a spider movie from last year that I thought was killer. It was so good and so tense. And I think French directors almost always kick much ass. And he said, the reason I'm so excited about Evil Dead Burn, he said, I want to punish the audience. I want to punish them. Damon, you know me. You know what I want hell on earth. And I think Evil Dead Burn is going to bring it. My last most anticipated movie of the year, and this may be a little bit of a left field one, but it was positioned as a horror, so I'm expecting a horror movie, and that is DC Studios' Clayface, written by Mike Flanagan, everybody's favorite horror man. Mike Flanagan wrote this movie. I forgot who's directing it. It's somebody else that's known too.
It's the guy who did the Speak No Evil remake. The Speak
Oh
No
yeah,
Evil.
okay, yes. He's a good director too. He also did not Kill List. He did another great movie also. He did Eden Lake. That's the other one he did, which is a brutal movie. It's super brutal movie. If DC Studios is going to come out guns blazing, and I'm really seeing what James Gunn is doing with the universe, where it's like all these different things can exist. If you've watched the Penguin show, it doesn't really feel like the Batman. It's its own thing, even though they exist in the same universe. If you watch Peacemaker, it doesn't feel like Superman, but they exist together. If you're telling me that Clayface is going to be a body horror film, which I love body horror, sign me the fuck up. It's in the Batman universe. It's a horror. I want it. Give it to me now.
And you got to remember, James Gunn comes from horror. Like that was his root.
That's right.
You know, he wrote the Dawn of the Dead remake, which may be one of the best remakes ever made. Period. Like in terms of anything. He started in horror. He's done a lot of horror in his career. He started with Trauma. That was Trauma.
Yeah, he was writing trauma movies.
Yeah. Like James Gunn is based in horror. Now he didn't write and direct this movie, but obviously he's the architect of the DC universe now. And when I heard about this, I was like, "Oh, yeah, sign me the fuck up!" Like I'm all for it. Like, yeah, give me that. And that definitely one of my most anticipated as well. That I'm very much looking forward to that because we've had a bit of a dull period with superhero films. We like Superman. Superman really was awesome. That was a really good movie.
Yeah.
And we like Thunderbolts, a movie
I love Thunderbolts.
Yeah, Thunderbolts was great. But yeah, right now it kind of feels like I'm waiting for The Boys final season, and I'm not really excited about a lot else in like the comic book realm. Yeah, Clayface is one, and you know I do like Mike Flanagan. I think he's a pretty damn good writer, so I am looking forward to that. So yeah, I'm with you. And by the way, it's Sebastian Vanacek was the director of was it Infected or whatever? And then
oh yes, thank you, Sebastian Vanacek directing Evil Dead Burn.
Was it Infested? Infested, yes. Sebastian Vanacek directing Evil Dead Burn. That's another one. I'm very much looking forward to that as well. So there was a lot. I could have named up like 5 more I'm looking forward to. But Horror in 2026 should be interesting. And by the way, we always talk about January being a down month. Not this year. There's a lot of big horror films dropping in January this year, including 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. So we actually will have some pretty cool stuff to review in the new year, which generally January, February can be kind of rough. And this year, I mean, we had Companion this year. We got some pretty decent movies. We Bury the Dead, the new Daisy Ridley movie comes out.
It's a good one.
We mentioned 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. I know you're really excited about Primate. I know that's probably your most anticipated.
Oh, get out of here. So, this is an April Fool's, Damon. Don't mess around with the folks at home.
Yeah, so we got a lot to look forward to in 2026, like I said, and we appreciate it. So real quick, we're going to close out the show on this. I want us to run down our top 10s again for everybody that just, fast forward to the episode. What is your top 10? I want you to rattle off your top 10. I'll rattle off my top 10, and we'll get out of here and close out our best of episode.
Final tally, Damon. Number 10, Rule of Jenny Penn. Number 9, Ugly Stepsister. Number 8, Silent Night, Deadly Night. Number 7, Bugonia. Number 6, Companion. Number 5, Hard Eyes. Number 4, Frankenstein. Number 3, Bring Her Back. Number 2, 28 Years Later. And number 1, Sinners.
And for me, Patrick, my top 10 horror films of the year, starting out at number 10 with Marshmallow. Number 9, Together. Number 8, Night of the Reaper. Number 7, Predator Badlands. Number 6, Clown in a Cornfield. Number 5, Companion. Number 4, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Number 3, 28 Years Later. Number 2, Weapons. And number 1, Sinners. That is our best of 2025, Patrick. We are looking forward to 2026. By the way, we are not done this year. We still have 2 more episodes coming on Stranger Things. We're going to do volume 2, and we're also going to do the finale. So we're not done reviewing stuff for the year, but we're done with movies because there's no more movies that we're going to be reviewing this year. We're just doing TV for the final couple installments of Stranger Things. Thank you to everyone that tuned into our show this year, whether you listen to us once, twice, or all episodes, because we do everyone every single week. We appreciate it. All of our patrons, patreon.com/rewindoflivingdead. You're going to get this episode very, very soon. So you're going to get a jump on everybody else for the end of the year. So we appreciate you, of course, and everyone that's followed us on social media, reached out and given us suggestions on movies, told us stuff they liked, why they disagree with us, why they agree with us, whatever the case may be. We would not be here without you guys, so we appreciate it. And yeah, that's our 2025, Patrick. I'll give you a chance if you want to say anything before we get out of here.
Thank you for sticking with us this year. We know we were a little more negative than we typically are, and we truly don't mean to be. We're not those guys. We're not haters. Rewind of the Living Dead loves good movies, and we really hope that in the new year we get to talk about a lot of great movies with all of you. Thank you so much for supporting us. The patrons, thank you all so much. You guys are amazing. I interact with the patrons constantly. I wish you all a happy holidays. I wish you all a happy new year. Tune in. We got our Stranger Things episodes coming. Don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere yet. We never take a day off. Weirdly, we're always here for you. And thank you for always being here for us.
And always, as always, check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms. If you missed any episodes, go back. We're on YouTube. Rewind of the Living Dead on YouTube. We are on Facebook, or we are on I'm going social media. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are everywhere you get your podcasts at. So if you missed any episodes, go back and listen to those. Check those out throughout the year. And always follow us on social media. We drop clips and reviews that we don't do online, things like that. Follow Rewind of the Living Dead on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you guys. And obviously, as I mentioned, patreon.com/rewindoflivingdead. It's not expensive. You really do support us when you do that. It means a world of difference to us in terms of like just helping us monetize the show a little bit, but also we put exclusive episodes up there. We did an entire season-long review of Alien Earth. We did an entire season-long review of Welcome to Derry. We do our Film Core podcast, which are non-horror movies. We did Superman, we did The Smashing Machine, and our next one coming up is going to be for my guy, Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. So stay tuned for that in the near future. Thank you to everyone, our patrons, our fans. We appreciate you for giving us a great 2025. We'll be back, of course, with our Stranger Things episode coming up. And as I always mention, social media, you can always follow us personally. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, for everyone that tuned in this year. We will see you soon. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. And we will see you for Stranger Things, and we will see you in 2026.
Peace.